and then we're going to dive headfirst into a convertible Jaguar. I think it was convertible. I don't know. My memory's going out of whack with this movie because it's unreliable. Let's wrap it up with Lenny, our main character.
Didn't we just do Lenny?
We did Teddy.
I could have sworn we switched to Lenny like 10 minutes ago.
I don't appreciate this meta joke.
It's not a meta joke. I'm pretty sure we switched to Lenny like 10 minutes ago.
No, I did my whole wrap up with Teddy. Swear.
Okay. Well, we've been talking about Lenny for the last 10 minutes.
When you listen back to the tape where I said I'll wrap it up on Teddy.
At one point you said that, well, let's bring it to Lenny.
I did not say that.
You're assuming
She didn't know it was him.
it was this undercover cop.
No, she didn't know it was the guy she wanted to kill.
I think this is all in Lenny's head.
Mark Boone Jr.
She ran it for the guy that she wanted to kill.
What's going on here?
You want to be a Teddy?
Gave her a license plate to run and she ran it. Is this real?
I'm not even sure he's a cop.
This is
If
fake.
it wasn't Teddy's car, would she have given him the
Remember,
license?
Lenny
Jimmy
gave
Crack
her a
Corn.
license
Is that how you
plate to
wanna live your
run.
life?
She ran it and then gave it to him. And shocker, he forgets what he's doing. Also, what are the tattoo artists thinking? Like when a crazed, disheveled man comes in and just pays cash and says, hey, you need to tattoo this note on my body before I forget. One of them being find him, kill him.
They've probably tattooed worse, let's be honest.
Hey, Benny Noodle, everybody. What's poppin', corn dogs? It's, wait a minute. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's going on? Oh, got something written on my hand. It says, remember Jimmy Crack Corn. That's me. Oh my God. What? Where? Oh, I'm with my co-host, Nick. And I'm Captain Crunch, Mr. Pop. I'm here. I'm forgetting what I'm doing, but I'm here. Nick, welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing well. What an intro. You caught me off guard there. I don't have as fun of an intro, but I am the Chief Corn Dog. I'm battered, fried, and live with my best friend, ready to review a movie.
For a movie that it has a lot of forgetting in it, it truly is unforgettable. We're watching Memento from 2000 by Christopher Nolan. But before we dive in, we got to get loose, get a little warm up because new tradition, it's Cinematrix time. This is a game from vulture.com and it's like a grid layout. We got 3 categories on the top row, 3 categories on the vertical row, and we need to make accurate, rare movie guesses that match up with those 2 correlating categories. And you can't reuse the same movie. So I'm going to read the top line here, the horizontals. So we got Melissa McCarthy, Octavia Spencer, and Oscar nominated Best Actress. Best Actor, as I would say.
Wow.
Nick, what do we got here?
Well, Vulture disagrees. Going vertically, top to bottom, we have Allison Janney. Okay. Yes, you never know. I get celebrity names butchered all the time. One word titles and release date 2014 to 2024.
Definitely more categories on this vertical slate. And we got 2 actors up top. All right, so we have our categories. Nick, where do you want to start? Jeopardy style.
Let's start top right.
Oscar nominated and Allison Janney.
Let's do it.
What do you got for this one? I know Allison
Janney well.
Okay, so you can Google the actor, but do not look at the movies that pop up. So you could just at least get a visual.
Oh, okay. Familiar enough.
Oof. I mean, I really got nothing here.
Yeah, I got nothing. Should we move on to the next one? Because I know this one.
I know she was in Juno. That's the only thing coming to mind. We could just say Juno.
Okay.
I don't think it's gonna be correct.
I'd be shocked if Juno won.
I'm selecting it on 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm sitting here with a shocked face.
Oh, I didn't put mine in. No way, she got Best Actress on Juno?
So, okay. Well,
nominated, not winner. So you just need nominated. Well, yeah, everybody gets nominated these days.
Okay, well, actually, hold on. Looking at this now, I think it is a movie that had a Best Actress Oscar nominated and also had the actor in it. And this actor isn't necessarily the Best Actress nominated. You know what I'm saying?
Oh. That's confusing, but I'll take the win.
Nick, give me Oscar nominated Best Actress, aka actor, one word title for 500.
we just went over this in our Oscar episode. I'm going with the movie Maestro. I'm pretty sure that had an Oscar-nominated Best Actress.
Oh, okay. A freshie. Okay, I was gonna say Gravity, but let's play it safe. We could do Maestro.
I think Gravity's safer because I do remember Sandra Bullock getting a nomination for that.
Let's guess it on 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's go 2%.
Easy 2%.
2%. That's a good one right there. Okay. I feel like we're going strong on this right column here. So let's just finish it out. Oscar nominated Best Actress versus released in let's just do Maestro for this one. 2014 to 2024.
I was thinking Maestro. I'm pretty sure that got nominated, right? If not, Poor Things would be a slam dunk. Yeah, because
Carey Mulligan was my guess.
That's right. Maestro it is.
Let's go.
It's slam dunk, buddy.
Oh, 2%. Dude, we're killing this one. We're killing this one. Now we're getting into sketchy territory here because we got to match up actors now on a couple of these.
Where do you want to start?
I feel like I'd rather build up my confidence and go with the one-word title or 2014 to 2024 release date.
For Octavia Spencer?
For either of them.
Let's start there in the middle tile. Octavia Spencer, one-word title. I believe I have one. Was there not a... I can't tell if it was 100% horror. Wasn't she in a movie called Ma?
Yes.
Just M-A?
Yes, she was Ma. She was Ma.
Yeah. She was Ma.
Dude, nice pull. Okay.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, yes. Oh, that's got to be the most popular one.
81%. Yeah.
Ma. Nice one.
Release date for Octavia Spencer, 2014 to 2024. I'm just going to go with Hidden Figures.
I was going to say that too. I feel like that's a safe pick. It's probably going to be up in the high percentages, but we just got to take the W after last week's Medea goes.
Last week was tough.
Make sure it's
there was too much Medea. You put Tyler Perry on a quiz, and I'm helpless.
All right, Hidden Figures is at a clean 57% guess rate, so pretty middle of the road there. I like it. All right, let's move over to Melissa McCarthy, one-word title. I'd have one in mind right off the rip. It's Heat.
Was she
Sandra Bullock?
Oh, okay. I was gonna ask, was she in Bridesmaids?
Oh yeah, she was. But I'm gonna go with Heat. I feel like that's a lower. People probably go straight to Bridesmaids.
We could use one for one and one for the 2014 to 2024.
Wait, hold on. Oh no,
I think it's the Heat.
It's the Heat because Heat is with
Heat is with
someone
with Pacino.
Yeah,
Heat is with Al Pacino. I like guys like you. They keep me on my toes. Yeah, that's Heat.
Yeah, don't Robert De Niro, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that is the Heat. So don't go with Heat. Okay, never mind. Bridesmaids.
We're going Bridesmaids?
We're going Bridesmaids. And that has a 49% guess rate. All right.
Well, we can go with the Heat for 2014 to 2024.
Let's go with the Heat.
So we have that.
That's got to be 2014. Yeah, it has to be.
It has to be. I'm guessing. No.
What? Hold on. Oh no, that was 2013.
We should have done it the other way around. When was Bridesmaids released?
Well, no, the Heat wouldn't have been a one-word title.
Oh, you're right. Bridesmaids was 2011.
Damn, is that old?
I guess so. I don't know.
Oh shit! All right. Well,
any of that. I do, however, if we can go back to
this one.
I was thinking about this. No, I was thinking about another one.
Oh.
I do think I was looking at Allison Janney's face some more with Octavia Spencer fairly recently. I believe they were both in The Help.
Allison Janney, you want to go with The Help? Okay. I'm going to believe you, and I'm going to hit guess.
Let's do it.
Now. All right. Okay, 95%, but it's still correct. Nice job, Nick.
I believe that it sounds like a thing where they've only been in 2 movies together. And somebody got 5%, somebody got the 95%.
Wow. You got us back in the W column there. I feel like our best shot is just we have one guess left. It's just got to be
I can't even think Allison Janney and Melissa McCarthy.
I think we're going to have to go with the 2014 to 2024 release date for Melissa McCarthy. However, I'm thinking of this other movie called Spy or something with Jason Statham and Melissa McCarthy.
There was a Spy one.
I think it was just called.
I think it was just called Spy.
I think it was just called Spy because that's another one-word title, right?
Yeah.
So that would kind of fall in this category.
Dude, I'm going with Spy.
There's like, what was that one with Eddie Murphy and Owen Wilson? Was that I Spy?
Might have been.
I think Spy is it. Okay.
I'm ready to go with Spy.
I'm going to guess now. Let's go. Built different. 12%.
8 out of 9. Top 26% of players today. The score of 2,099.
Let's see the most popular guesses. Oh, Allison Janney and Melissa McCarthy were both in Spy because that was the most popular guess for that category.
Interesting.
Bridesmaids was the most popular for our selection. So was Ma. So was Hidden Figures. So was The Help. However, for the Melissa McCarthy 2014 to 2024, what is that? I can't read that.
I don't know why they make these so small.
Looks like it says, "Can you even forgive me?" Poor Things is actually down there for Oscar-nominated Best Actress because I think people probably got scared into thinking it's the winner. So they probably went with Poor Things. Whereas we, the true corn dogs and poppies, we went with Maestro, my gal, Carey Mulligan. I, Tonya, for Oscar-nominated Best Actress versus Allison Janney at 82% was the most popular. However, we're built different because we got Juno.
Get wrecked, everybody else. We
are within the mainstream there because it looks like the hardest one to answer was that Allison Janney, Melissa McCarthy crossover. 33% success rate for that one. That was a fun warm-up. Thanks for playing along. Hopefully you got some right if you're listening at home. Let's dive into the movie that we're reviewing this week. Like we mentioned, this movie is directed by Christopher Nolan, and it's written by the Nolans. Jonathan Nolan, I caught this credit in the beginning. It said it was based on the short story by Jonathan Nolan, aka Jonah. However, I believe the short story actually got published after this movie came out, but it was technically Jonah's idea of someone who had short-term memory loss and was trying to figure out a mystery. And basically the whole idea was not started, but Jonah brought it up on a road trip with Christopher and himself. And Jonah told Christopher about his idea for a story. And Chris said, "Oh, if you can write that story in the POV of the first person, that would be excellent." As it got elevated into a movie idea, Nolan states that he wrote the screenplay from the first shot until the last shot in movie order. And he never wrote it in chronological order and then split it up. He wanted to view it from the audience perspective. Now, obviously, he didn't just nail it on the first try. He had to go back and rewrite certain things and make sure it all checked out by the end of it. But still, to go to those lengths, it just shows that you're dedicated to your craft and that this movie fell in the right hands and was sparked by the right people.
Absolutely. I mean, the movie itself, the story itself, the premise itself is compelling enough. First time I watched this movie, and even the second time I watched this movie, and then this most recent time that I rewatched this movie twice. I think we both rewatched it twice this week to really let it sink in. A scene comes up where he's in his motel room and he has all his Polaroids and he has writing on them and he has this large storyboard where he's connecting the dots. And I just paused the movie and thought to myself, damn, this is such a good premise. A man with short-term memory every day trying to solve more and more of this murder. It's so good.
And this guy with the short-term memory loss is played by Guy Pearce.
Love Guy
alongside
Pearce.
Carrie-Anne Moss and official friend of the show, Joe Pantoliano, a.k.a. Joey Pants.
Joey Pants.
Brad Pitt was originally interested in the role, and I think that's what got Hollywood kind of buzzing about it, and people got interested. But Carrie-Anne Moss was the first to actually sign on. She was coming fresh off The Matrix, and she knew Joey Pants from The Matrix as well and suggested him for the role.
For me, Carrie-Anne Moss is Trinity from The Matrix, always will be.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you said, Joe Pantoliano, same deal. Recognize him straight from The Matrix.
of course, from the adventures of Pluto Nash and Daredevil, as we've seen both on this podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome back for the third time, Joey Pants.
He's been around. And then Guy Pearce. I'm a huge Guy Pearce fan. LA Confidential. He's great. The Hurt Locker. He's great. Memento. Obviously, this one is, I'd say, probably his best movie I've ever seen him in, but he's done a ton of stuff, and he's just a very, very good actor. I thoroughly enjoy him in everything he does. Doesn't really have a shtick about him, just a pure actor.
Well, this movie's in the right hands with that. This movie also has an estimated budget of $9 million, and it went on to gross $40 million worldwide.
That's surprising to me. I can't say this for sure because in 2000, I was 9 years old. If I had to guess, this feels like a movie that gained a lot of popularity post theaters. Would you agree with that?
I think so, because I think the appreciation for this movie grows on rewatches and home watches. So I think just going into the theaters and walking out of it, your mind is blown and you don't really know what to think. I think it kind of had a life of its own afterwards.
Yeah, I'd say it still has a life. You ask people about movies they enjoy, psychological thrillers, mind-bending movies with a twist. I mean, Memento's on the top 5 of everybody's list. It still is. It still holds its place there. James, before we get into the log line, could I address the listeners real quick?
Sure.
So I want to say, because this movie has a life of its own and because it's so widely regarded, we're not going to go through our normal plot talk that we do where we break down the plot because there's just so much to digest. I don't think we could do it justice in our normal plot talk fashion.
Formula.
Yeah. So for this movie, first, just going to tell you right now, if you have not seen this movie, don't listen to this podcast yet. Put it on pause, go watch the movie, and then definitely make sure to come and finish this podcast because we appreciate you listening.
Yeah, we need the listens.
So watch the movie, and we're going to try and break down, what we think the movie was trying to tell us, the importance of some of these characters, what the larger themes are, the meanings, all those fun things. So, but you're not going to hear us go through the plot because the plot, I mean, we'll talk about it, but it's so convoluted to go through the way that the movie portrays it. And that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, but we can't in good conscience go through a normal plot talk with this.
Can I correct you?
Absolutely.
We're not going to present to you what we think happened. We're going to tell you what happened. We're breaking this movie down. We're getting weird. We're getting real. We're getting in the mind of Lenny Shelby, straight out of San Francisco, California. We're going in. So spoilers. We're just going to be straight up explaining this movie because it's so wild. It's such a crazy concept. So what we're going to do is read this log line. Our plot talk is going to be a quick synopsis of what you need to know. And then we're going to dive headfirst into a convertible Jaguar. Let's jump into the log line. Nick, read it.
A man with short-term memory loss attempts to track down his wife's murderer.
When I was trying to write my laughable log line, I really couldn't. It just came out the same as this, except hopefully a little bit funnier. But that is really just bare bones in it, man. That is it. That's what we got, and I'm in.
The interesting thing about that log line is that's what you get off the rip for this movie, and at the end, that's kind of also what you're left with. It's about as basic as you can get, and this movie keeps it pretty simple while taking you on a wild, wild journey. So, James, with that, let's get into synopsis talk.
Synopsis talk.
To sum it up, Guy Pearce, he is Leonard, aka Lenny. He's an insurance claims investigator who lives with his diabetic wife, apparently.
Question mark.
He has this case of this man who is claiming to suffer from anterograde amnesia named Sammy Jankis. Not Jenkins, it's Jankis. That took me a long time to get over. I kept thinking of Old Man Jenkins. So
fair.
While that's in the background, I guess we don't know how far back in Lenny's timeline that is. That is happening. That's
timelines are never established in this movie.
Yeah, but you do figure it out. You do figure out where you are in the timeline after you watch this movie. So that's happening in his past life. And then one night, there's two junkies that break into his house and rape and murder his wife. He kills one of them, but then the other one attacks him from behind and leaves him with brain damage and then gets away. This is referred to as the incident. And during this incident, Lenny develops short-term memory loss, meaning he cannot develop new memories after this incident.
I just do want to add the memory loss angle. So it definitely always happens every time he falls asleep. However, he doesn't maintain those memories throughout the day. It's almost if he doesn't write something down or he loses focus, he'll forget it. So he can't commit things to memory. So it might be that he can remember, if he's engaged in a conversation, he can remember that conversation for 15 minutes. If somebody says something to him and then he sits down and loses focus, it could be 2 minutes.
That's the big thing. It's really the losing focus that makes him snap back to zero. So as long as he's staying focused at the task at hand, he can be in the moment. And that could be 10 seconds. That could be hours, I think, actually. And a couple scenes in this movie, I feel like there's a couple long ones. And I'll point them out as we go.
We also have this character, John Gamble. He goes by Teddy. This is Pants.
Joey Pants. Mr. Pants.
He's undercover, and he's the cop who's assigned to Leonard's case. Lenny. He's called both things. After his wife is murdered. So the police don't believe that there was a second junkie at the scene who smacked Lenny over the head. Teddy does believe him. And he helps Lenny find this man and kill him. Ever since he got hit in the head, he sets up this routine and he uses tattoos that he puts on himself or has tattooed on himself and Polaroid pictures with notes written on them to create an artificial memory system so that he can remember when he wakes up each day, he can set a baseline for himself about what
like
he knows,
a database.
What he doesn't know. Yep. Lenny also has removed pages from his police file to fool himself about his past and about Sammy Jankis. So we learned about this. Jankis, sorry. Yeah, it is hard. Jenkins is right in my mind. We learned this and we get glimpses of it. It bleeds through Lenny throughout the movie. His memory loss is a thing, but he also has selective forgetfulness as far as what he chooses to write down or doesn't choose to write down as well. There's little, it bleeds through where it's almost a conscious decision he's making about what he will and will not remember.
Yep, Lenny doesn't know where he is, and he's in some town, and more than a year after the real John G's murder, Teddy calls up Leonard, who's staying at a discount inn, who I believe John Gamble, a.k.a. Teddy, put him up in.
Mm-hmm.
Leonard talks to him about the Sammy Jankis case that he was working on, and we come to learn that it's a little bit of a blurred recount of this. And we come to learn that Lenny and Sammy's stories are very similar and it's very suspicious. And we think that Lenny is mixing up the history and the story of these two characters. Teddy convinces him to go meet him in the lobby to go after a gentleman named Jimmy Grant. The main suspect in Lenny's life and one of his tattoos, he tattoos facts on his body. One of the facts is that the culprit's name is John G. or James G. So I could be a culprit, technically. You never know. I'm not hanging around Lenny.
Oh, shoot. I didn't even think about that.
I was watching this with my sister and my dad when I watched it for the first time. And in the movie, Joey Pants says, John G, James G, do you know how many John G's there are in this world? And my sister looked at us and she's like, yeah, there's two of them right here. And I was like, we're like, oh, shit. We're suspects, man.
Lenny's coming.
So among those suspects is Jimmy Grant, who is a local drug dealer, and obviously his initials match the original culprit's description. And Teddy's trying to get rid of Jimmy, make some money, and maybe help Leonard, or at least pretend that he's helping Leonard, because he's tricking him into thinking that this Jimmy Grant's character is the John G or James G that Lenny is supposed to be after and killing. So he's using Leonard to do all these things and take advantage of him, kind of be a personal hitman.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win, for sure.
So Leonard goes to this place, basically an abandoned warehouse at Teddy's direction, and kills Jimmy, thinking he's the one who raped and murdered his wife, but realizes the truth about what he's done and what Teddy's been making him do. I think Jimmy says something that is important. I think he says Sam.
Yeah.
Which is this Sammy Jankis character.
Yeah, Teddy set up this fake drug deal. Then Teddy is a John Gamble, aka Teddy, is a cop, like we
Correct.
said.
He's a crooked cop.
He's hella crooked because he set up this phony ass drug deal with Jimmy Grants, and he was relying on Lenny to kill him so that Teddy could drive away with Jimmy's car and the bag full of money that was in the trunk for this drug deal. And Jimmy, we realize, has actually met Lenny because he says Sammy. And Lenny tells everybody about Sammy because it's the easiest way to explain his condition.
So after realizing what Teddy basically set him up to do, he writes notes to himself. So throughout the movie, you see Leonard writing notes to himself, usually on the back of Polaroid pictures, to associate things he knows about somebody with their picture. So he writes down Teddy's license plate number, which in his mind, when he wakes up in the next morning, he's not going to remember what happened. All he'll know is that the killer's license plate is this. And so he'll know that this Teddy is the killer. So that incriminates Teddy. So Teddy's now on his hit list. He then shows up to the bar where Jimmy's girlfriend, the person he killed, Natalie, and this is Carrie Ann Moss. He shows up to the bar she's looking at. He has a coaster in his pocket that says, "Go here." He always has these little clues on his body that lead him where to go, the next place where to go. He's associated with Jimmy's disappearance because he steals Jimmy's car and wears Jimmy's clothes.
Literally wearing his clothes.
There's actually a point where they maybe sleep together. He wakes up in her bed. Again, we don't know what happened the night before.
They slept together.
They definitely banged. And he's about to leave. He's putting on his shirt, and she says, "You can't leave with my shirt." And I thought that was a weird little interaction.
That was her shirt.
It was her shirt, but it was a weird interaction because the other shirt he's wearing is her boyfriend's shirt. I was like, thinking back on it, I go, interesting. Okay. So there was more of a connection there. Again, Nolan doesn't throw in these little lines here. Everything that's said has some sort of meaning. But she uses him to protect her from Jimmy's associates, like this man named Dodd. This whole situation with Dodd is there's a weird side plot where we don't know if Natalie's punishing Leonard for killing her boyfriend or using Leonard to get rid of other people, but she manipulates him into killing Dodd.
Because Dodd thinks that she stole Jimmy's money and
the
they
drugs.
Can't find Jimmy and the drugs. So Natalie's wanted by Dodd. So with Dodd in the picture, Teddy actually does help Leonard deal with the Dodd situation because Dodd is chasing Lenny down because he is obviously in Jimmy's Jaguar, which is stolen, and Jimmy's missing, and Dodd doesn't like that. The way this movie plays out, we don't quite know Teddy's intentions, but obviously after the fact, we know he's very much in it for himself. So he helps Leonard because he wants to keep Leonard close because he is just a useful tool or assistant or just a person that he can take advantage of. And he is trying to stay away from Natalie because he knows who she is. And she actually knows his undercover name because he was dealing with Jimmy Grant's undercover. Natalie's lies convince Leonard she'll help him, which she does by running the license plate that Leonard gives her, which by the end of the movie we know is John Gamble's, aka Teddy's license plate. She also gives Leonard a place to kill him, which is the abandoned building that this all goes down in. And it's unclear whether or not Natalie knows John Gamble is Teddy.
Yeah, we're not sure how well they know each other because everybody's lying because everybody has this whole side secrets.
I think Teddy knows Natalie by name and by face, and Natalie only knows Teddy by name.
Yes.
And maybe face.
It's interesting how much people lie to Leonard because he won't remember it in 30 minutes if you leave him alone. So the chronological story here ends when Teddy meets up with Leonard again. Leonard takes him over to Natalie's place, which the same abandoned warehouse where they killed Jimmy Grant's. And because of what he wrote down on the license plate and the other notes that he left himself, he believes Teddy is the one who raped and murdered his wife, and he kills Teddy. And that is the start of the movie, but that's the end of the chronological.
And that's plot talk. Just kidding. Haha. That's synopsis talk. And so, yeah, exactly what you said. This film starts out at this moment. So there's a Polaroid photograph of a dead man. We don't know who it is. It's going from its developed state into its undeveloped state. And this entire opening scene is actually playing backwards. And it is foreshadowing our non-chronological storyline that we're going to be experiencing and trying to grasp on a first watch. And it starts out hot. Boom. Like, here's a dead guy. And then we move. The way the story is set up, there's scenes that are shot in color and they're in reverse order. They're not playing in reverse. They're not walking backwards and talking backwards, but the scenes are presented in reverse order. And then there's this whole black and white sequence timeline that is presented chronologically. And the way these two intercutting storylines end is at the same time. The colored sequence plays in reverse and the black and white sequence plays chronologically. So we're always going forward in black and white.
Yeah.
When the black and white sequence ends, when we go to the abandoned building, he kills Jimmy and then he takes a photo of Jimmy who's dead because Leonard thinks he honestly got the real John G again.
Mm-hmm.
For
maybe
the however many time. And he's looking at the Polaroid. The Polaroid's coming into development. And as it's coming into development, we slowly fade from black and white to color. So it's the big reveal that is the 180 point. After the big reveal, all the colored scenes, if you were to watch it backwards, goes in order. What Lenny thinks is who the real John G is, the killing, at the very end of the movie. That's where these two sequences stop, intercutting, and we are now picking up from the beginning of the color sequence, and our black and white sequence has wrapped up. Christopher Nolan I was watching a video, an interview with him. He would have been way easier if I was him and had a chalkboard behind me, because he basically drew two lines that were parallel to each other. He said, here's the color sequence, here's the black and white sequence, and he had arrows. Arrows were pointing backwards on the color sequence as they were moving left to right. And the black and white sequence, the arrows were moving in the correct direction. And then they actually met at a hairpin turn. So he said, here's the black and white arrows going left to right. And then we do a hairpin turn and the arrows are going right to left. However, we just intercut between the two of them. So that's how the format of this movie is set up.
And this is, I believe this is how they shot it, right? They shot all the color, scene A, scene B, scene C, D, E, all the way through, I think actually through V. And then they did 22 black and white, and then they just chopped those up. So they would play color scene A, black and white scene 22, color scene B, black and white scene 21. And so, yeah, like you were saying, two lines happening at the same time, but in reverse order, and then meeting at that hairpin. You figure it out, maybe after 3 or 4 switches of the timelines, you realize what's happening. What I loved about the going backwards in the colored scenes is that you'd see a scene and then you'd get the scene right before it in the next, we'll call it present day scene. But they would end that present day scene. You would get about 5 seconds of the previous scene you had just seen. There's a lot of the word scene. The previous scene, you get 5 seconds of that so that you could connect the dots. You never have to fill in the blanks. They're saying, hey, we're taking you all the way. We're even overlapping from the past scene so you can put this all together.
I think you get it after the second go round.
Mm-hmm.
The only place I kind of got lost almost was the black and white sequence. I didn't know if that was just supposed to be completely displaced, if it was just supposed to be lost in time. But as you watch it, you figure out, oh, black and white is going forward in time. These vignettes, snippets of the color sequence are being presented a scene at a time in the reverse order. So luckily it's not a random order. It's pretty easy to follow. And when you watch a scene, more is revealed in the following scene based on the information.
My first instinct when I first saw this movie was I thought that the black and whites were maybe what was happening between his forgetfulness.
Yeah.
That was my first thought.
I think it's presented like, oh, he shot somebody. Now he's back in his hotel, monologuing on the phone. Oh, now he met up with Joey Pants. Oh, wait a minute. He just shot him again. Okay. Oh, we're back in black and white. Oh, this is picking up. So you kind of get it.
It's confusing, but intuitive.
It's a high IQ movie here.
Props to the director. Props to Nolan's.
So we have the synopsis laid out for you guys, and we understand the format of this movie. Nick, you had this great idea of diving into this movie by just talking about the characters and their intentions, their roles in the movie. So instead of just going through the motions and the timeline, let's talk characters. And is there one that you want to start out with?
Yeah, I'd love to. So thanks for that segue there. I believe this story is all about characters and how different they are, who you can trust, what you can trust. I mean, there's so many themes and motifs to this movie, but I wanted to start with the character of Sammy Jankis, who I believe is the most important. Jankis. Gosh, dang it.
Don't forget.
Dude, it's programmed into my brain. So I wanted to start with Sammy Jankis, who I believe to be the most important character in the film.
Hot take. Let's hear it.
For a couple reasons. One is he's the one who gives us the insight into this interrograde amnesia. And not just us, he gives Leonard the baseline for the interrograde amnesia, right? To be able to understand it every time he wakes up, he understands what it is because he has dealt with Sam Jankis. He also understands, he makes mention throughout the movie, Sam Jankis, he used to try and make notes, but his notes weren't good. He screwed up. He wasn't able to do anything if he didn't have focus, if he didn't have intention, he didn't have the instincts. I have that, so I'm different from that. So he learned how to be who he is from Sam Jankis. And Sam Jankis he's the baseline for why Leonard operates the way that he does.
Well, as we'll discuss the truth or lie about Sammy Jankis, let's get into it. So here's what I have to say. So for Sammy, first off, we only see this fool in black and white. We get a lot of exposition in these black and white sequences. It's a lot of Guy Pearce on the phone talking to a mystery person. We don't quite know who he's talking to, but he's giving the audience a lot of backstory. He was an insurance investigator, so he would investigate claims that came across his desk. One of the claims was that this Sammy Jankis guy was suffering short-term memory loss, and Leonard's job was to go in and decide if he was faking it or not. In these flashbacks from Leonard's POV, he said that Sammy would go to doctors and have tests be done because they wanted to test out if it was psychological or if it was physical or if he was just bullshitting everybody from the jump. So during these tests, the doctors and especially Lenny's insurance company, they wanted to see if Sammy could remember by instinct and not by memory. And they do this with something called, I think it's just the shape test. They just have all these metal shapes on the table and one of them shocks and one of them doesn't, or multiple, like maybe 3 of them shock you and 3 of them don't. He kept failing these tests. They denied his claim because they said it was psychological.
Right. So I want to bring up 2 things, if you don't mind, to me interrupting you here about this. One, shout out to the doctor in this scene, Thomas Lennon.
You just stole my goddamn thunder. I was going to get to that, but you put up your hand like you had something really important to say first.
No, I do. So take that out. I'm going to give you that.
No, you can
We'll fix it in post. We'll fix it in post.
You can have it.
But this was actually inspired by a real life test. So this is a real thing, interrograde amnesia. And there's a real life test that was done by doctors. I forget when, it was back in the day. But a doctor would, every time they met with this patient who had interrograde amnesia, would shake his hand and have one of those joke buzzers on their hand that would shock them. And after about, I don't know how many times, but enough times, the
1 million
patient with interrograde amnesia started to refuse to shake his hand. Because as they explain in the movie a little bit, the memory part of your brain is different than the instinct part of your brain. So if you can train the instinct part of your brain to react, then you can override that memory side of your brain. And this comes up a few times with Lenny saying, I have to trust my instincts, not my memory.
So Sammy keeps failing these shape tests, and this determines that his condition was actually psychological, not physical, if anything. And Leonard, like you said, he does point out that Sammy did not have a system. Sammy's not a system QB. He's a freaking rogue agent out here. Whereas Leonard is a system QB. He does have a system. He has a routine. He lives his life by routine, and he makes it a point to tell the audience that he conditions himself and states that he goes off instinct and he learns by repetition. So even though his memory, his ability to create new memories is non-existent, he does have the advantage of having good instinct. And he makes that clear to us. According to the big reveal by Teddy at the end, and by the end, we mean the beginning, the end of the black and white, the beginning of the color, we do learn this, all these crazy big revelations. I'm going to focus on Sammy because that's who we're talking about. So he does say that Sammy was reported to have been faking it. And Lenny throughout the entire movie has said, hold on. Lenny throughout the entire movie has said, I've never said Sammy faked it. I never said he faked it. But Teddy says, oh, Sammy was a faker. You said it. And then so we're like, okay, hold on. What's the truth here? What's the truth here? Sammy was faking it, I think.
You do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm taking Teddy's big reveal for truth because I feel like in this moment, Teddy does not think that any of this matters and he's just going to be 100% completely honest, which is a huge turning point for Lenny in multiple ways, as we'll see. But I do believe that Sammy was in fact faking it. And I'll tell you this. It's because I didn't catch this on my first watch, but I did on the second time. We see Sammy sitting in like a home, like a psychiatric spot. And you might have caught this too, but there's a very quick edit of Sammy sitting there and then someone passes by. And then in a flash, we see Lenny sitting in the exact same seat, taking Sammy's spot. There's this very quick wipe edit. We barely see Lenny there. And also the black and white kind of helps disguise this. So as we're going to learn, Lenny gets confused with Sammy's story. And I think he's blending a little bit of his life story with Sammy's. So Sammy did have a claim for having anterograde amnesia. However, I do think it was phony. And I don't think it was actually real. And I believe Lenny was projecting his own story onto Sammy's backstory and what he remembers from his life as an insurance investigator for Sammy's life, not his. Now you look shook and you think it looks like you have a different take on it.
Yeah, I do have a different take. I'm not shook. I actually like that theory a lot.
Let me just end it here. It's also revealed that Sammy, when I say revealed, I mean this is the information that's being provided to the audience. But Teddy in this big reveal says that Sammy never had a wife and that Lenny's wife survived the attack and that she was actually the one with diabetes. Because in Lenny's mind, Sammy had a wife with diabetes and he had to do these insulin shots. And that's ultimately what ends up killing Sammy's quote unquote wife, who doesn't actually exist. And we get flash cuts of Lenny again swapping positions with Sammy, except these ones are in color. And it was actually Lenny giving his wife injections of insulin. And what happens in the flashback black and white scene, Sammy's wife is she says, oh, I hid food around the house just to try and see if he can remember where it was in case he'd go hungry. And she was getting really desperate. And then her final straw was like, if this doesn't work, I don't even want to be alive. So the final test is she tells Sammy, hey, you need to give me my shot because it's my time. And she would think if Sammy was really, really faking it, then he wouldn't give her an overdose of insulin. But Sammy, quote unquote, could not break the cycle and kept giving her shots. And I want to say Sammy is faking it because, one, he doesn't have a wife. This never happened. This only happened with Lenny. So this is actually how Lenny's wife dies, because Lenny is giving his own wife too many insulin shots because he keeps forgetting that he just gave it to her. And then there's one last thing that suggests this. When he's in Natalie's house, right after Natalie offers to let Leonard stay there because she hears his sad story, learns about his condition, there's a part where she leaves. He snaps a Polaroid of Natalie, writes Natalie on it. That's where we see that for the first time. He sits down, he watches TV, just how Sammy used to watch TV, and he really liked commercials because they were short things that he can follow. And if it was a movie, He wouldn't know how it started. He would get frustrated. Leonard looks down at his hand. He sees this tattoo that says, "Remember Sammy Jankis." And we get a flash cut in color, not black and white, of someone flicking a needle, getting ready for an insulin shot. And I believe this is actually Lenny and his wife.
See, I think this was John Gamble messing with them, because there is a flash when they talk about the insulin. Said it was your wife doing the insulin or taking the insulin. She was diabetic. And he remembers a flash of him giving her the shot and her going, "Ow, that hurts." And then he shakes his head and remembers it of him pinching her at that injection spot and her saying, "Ow, that hurts." So we don't know what's his memory or what's being told is his memory. Right. And that's obviously that's a whole thing throughout the movie.
Yeah. The whole crazy part about this movie.
However,
we don't know.
I believe what Leonard was saying is correct. It's not physical, it's mental. So I think Sammy Jankis, his wife having insulin, kind of living a deadbeat life, I think he wanted to forget. He did not want to remember. So I think in it's just the psychological point of not wanting to remember and not caring to remember. Not that you can't remember. It's not physical. It's almost a psychotic break. And I believe that that's the same thing that's happening with Leonard. It's not a physical condition. It's a psychological break that he does not want to recover from, subconsciously.
Are you saying that Sammy, his condition is real and he had a wife?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, we disagree already.
Yeah. Sammy's condition existed because there's no reason for Leonard to not remember stuff before the incident. There's no reason. He has not misremembered anything pre-incident the entire time that we know of, right? That we know of, admittedly, right? We're trusting that he has no damage to his pre-incident memory, but his pre-incident memory has been pretty spot on up to this point.
Well, he does.
So I have no reason to believe that, but I believe Sammy's story is because they make a huge deal about, is it physical or is it psychological? And I think it's psychological, and Sammy had a psychological break. And so I'm more interested in, I don't think that Leonard is doing this knowingly. I think he's had such a psychological break that subconsciously he's doing all of this and does not care about the outcome, does not care to get better. This is his coping mechanism to his dead wife. It's not a condition. It's a coping mechanism.
So his memory has proved to be unreliable. And he even states that. He says you can't trust memories. You need to just trust facts and evidence.
Right.
So I wouldn't say that his memory pre-incident has been flawless or even 90% accurate. I think the whole point of this movie is that you can't trust your own memory.
Right. But we also can't trust what Teddy's saying.
No, we have no reason to trust literally anybody in this movie. However, I'll talk about the scene with Natalie when she's being like a complete bitch to Lenny. And
well, we kind of have to go to Natalie as a character. So let's just make that jump.
Yeah. I mean, do you have anything else on Sammy?
No, I think we covered it.
So with Natalie, she does have this whole scene with Lenny swearing at him, calling him names, being hyper rude and vicious, just like totally uncalled for language, treatment. It was messed up. So I think the more time characters spend with Lenny, they realize they could just be upfront and honest and just vent and just exhaust all this info, do an info dump on the poor guy, because he's not even gonna freaking remember 10 minutes later. So for Teddy's big reveal at the end, I do believe Teddy. I don't have any reason to, but I believe Teddy, because I think he's just laying it all out there. It's coming at the right time in the movie at the very end when we get the big reveal. This is one of the things I think Teddy is actually telling the truth about. So I do honestly think that Sammy did not have a wife. Up to interpretation if he was faking it or if it was psychological. It could have been that Sammy and Lenny were in the same psychiatric home. I took it as Lenny was projecting his personal story onto Sammy as a coping mechanism for burying his grief for actually being the one who killed his own wife, because she didn't die on the night of the attack and the sexual assault. She died by an insulin overdose via Lenny. So I think Lenny is suppressing that memory and projecting it onto Sammy's backstory.
So was Lenny faking the interrograde amnesia?
No, I think Lenny's is real, as we can see.
Then how would he remember killing his wife?
So the scenes in this movie where he holds the focus the longest are when he's thinking about his wife. And there's a part in the movie where he says, the memories are unreliable. You can't bank on them. You start doing something. You don't know why you started doing something else, but the feelings and the emotions stick with you. So I think one of the most traumatic events of not only losing his wife, but being the cause of killing his wife are in his deep subconscious. I wouldn't call them memories. I would call them recounts. Like he has a recollection of this happening in his subconscious, deep down in his brain. However, they're not surfacing as memories where he can just think about, oh yeah, that one time I killed my wife. No, the emotions were there. He felt guilt afterwards. It was that traumatic that they do resurface as projections as Sammy's backstory instead of Lenny's memories. Because I had that question too. I was like, how would he remember being the cause of his wife's murder if he had no new memory development after the incident? So I honestly think it has something to do with the other part of the brain that doesn't have to do with developing new memories. It's really just the grief and the loss and traumatic experience.
See, but that exact same reasoning is why I think it's not real. It's just a psychotic break that he's choosing to feed into. Because we see at the end, the ending scene for the movie, not chronologically, to me is so powerful because he basically decides, after hearing the information from Teddy of this information he did not want to hear, and knowing Teddy wasn't the one who killed his wife, there's a subconscious takeover of his brain that says, then we need to, when we wake up, we need to justify killing Teddy. Like there's a subconscious in his brain, the psychological part that's trying to protect itself, using this coping mechanism to say, we can't face what we know, and Teddy's going to reveal it to us. So he knew Teddy wasn't the murderer, but his brain forced him to write this down so that his future self would kill Teddy. That was it. That was motivated, not through knowing what was going on or a conditioning. That was from a psychological response where his brain took over to protect himself from ever remembering the thing that caused the psychotic break.
I saw that as an emotional response.
See, I didn't see it as emotional. I saw it as a psychotic because for a split second, it's almost like a split personality where this protective part of his brain came forward that was very conscious of what was happening and made a conscious decision that Teddy had to go. Because he never acted emotionally. It was almost sinister. It was almost premeditated in his brain that it came out and basically said, I'm going to fool tomorrow's Leonard into killing this guy because he's dangerous to our psyche, to our very fragile psyche.
Like a devil on the shoulder is kind of how you're explaining this, like a voice in the back of the head.
Yeah, it's almost. Yeah, it's such a heavy form of denial he's in that his brain went into flight or fight response, and his forward-facing self had the flight response, and then this psychological part deep in his brain that's trying to protect him had this fight response.
I think if he had a fight response, he would just cap him then.
But there's you hear about this when people go through traumatic experiences, whether it's when you're young, when you're older, your brain will trick itself into coping mechanisms. It'll trick itself into thinking certain things, remembering things a certain way, acting a certain way, and it's all subconscious. And so I believe that's what this was. I believe he is reached a psychotic breaking point, that there's still a piece of him, conscious piece of him somewhere in his brain that's so far back and retreated that it doesn't show itself. But when it needs to protect itself, it can make a conscious decision, like writing down Teddy's license plate number to make sure that like, it's a sinister mastermind back there behind the scenes, protecting him that he doesn't know exists.
All right. I like it. So you think Sammy's not faking it? I think Sammy's faking it.
I don't think Sammy's faking it. I think it's exactly what Lenny said. It's not physical. It's all psychological.
So is Lenny's physical or psychological?
No, I think it's a psychological break.
For both. For Sammy and Lenny.
Yeah, I think they have this. I think they essentially have the same condition. And I think that's why I'm not necessarily saying Teddy was wrong in his explanation of what he said, but it's this break, this mental break that Lenny can't face. He doesn't have the emotional capacity, the mental capacity to face it. So I think I think what Teddy told him, for the most part, other than killing his wife, is true. I don't know why he'd lie about that. I might have to go through that a little more, but I think all that's true. I just think
Sammy was faking it. I think he was just trying to get a false insurance claim because he had no wife. I honestly don't think he had a wife. He was just some jackass that was like faking short-term memory loss. But Lenny actually had the condition.
I think I want to sort of
want to go watch it a fourth and fifth time.
I think I want to end on this
on Sammy.
I don't want to end because if you have more to say, you have more to say.
No. We got to move on.
Where I come down on this, I think the beautiful part of this movie is whether he's faking it, whether it's physical or whether it's psychological, it doesn't matter because he doesn't change. Leonard's still going to act the way he does. And whatever it is, whether he's not crazy, whether he is crazy, whether it's a physical condition, he's going to continue on this path forever with no end in sight.
And along that path is going to be this chick named Natalie, who we're going to talk about next. So Natalie comes into the mix because at the very end of the movie, Lenny takes Jimmy's clothes, takes his car, and just kind of frees himself of his normal routine and says, you know what? I'm just going to, whatever you say, Teddy, if I can't remember stuff, if I can't do this, I'm telling myself that this is my car, these are my clothes, and I'm out. And shocker, he forgets what he's doing. Checks his pocket, finds a coaster. It says, come by after Natalie, with a name of a bar that she works at. Heads over there and meets her. And we do get hints that Natalie knows about Leonard because I think Jimmy, as we learned, Jimmy did meet Lenny at some point and called him Memory Man. So Natalie does know about Memory Man. She does know about a guy named Teddy. And Lenny, coming fresh off a kill of Jimmy Grant's, this starts the whole, why is Natalie in the circle? Why is she in this movie? Natalie was associated with Jimmy. She was his girlfriend. And Lenny's just waltzing around in his suit in his car while Jimmy's missing. So she's in the mix.
Yeah, and she is sadistic. You were mentioning earlier, Natalie, when she was telling Leonard everything, venting to him. That scene was interesting because I view that scene as she didn't really care about him. She was trying to get him to smack her up. She was manipulating him, right? So she can come back later with a black eye, tell him a story that never happened. She is the manifestation of wanting to trust your emotions over your instincts. So in his instincts, Leonard never trusts anybody. Natalie, for some reason, she gained his trust early. He wrote down on her picture, she'll help you. And he blindly trusts her with whatever story. So I think her purpose is to show the power of emotion over memory and instinct. And that gets him into a world of trouble.
Yeah, and the way the color sequences are presented, and then in retrospect, when you see the next scene and then the next scene and then the next scene, the meaning changes drastically. And I think these Natalie scenes really kind of nail it to the audience because we see one scene and we think it's one way, and then we see the next scene and we're like, oh wait, is it completely, this story just got flipped upside down on its head. And then we see the next scene, and then it's just more information being revealed backwards is mind-blowing to us, because she comes in, she looks like she just got beat up. And actually the first scene that we see her in, she's at a restaurant, and same thing. She's still got like a beaten face and like a bloody lip. This is where she hands off the envelope to Lenny about the license plate, because he wrote down Teddy's license plate at the end/beginning of this movie when Teddy was the new John G. And she runs it, hands the envelope off to him, and you're like, okay, I wonder why that happened. And then we see the next scene, and then she comes in, she's like, oh, Dodd just beat me up, blah, blah, blah. And Lenny's like, oh my God. He believes her because of what he's seeing, but something doesn't quite feel right. His instinct is kicking in. He's saying, I think someone's trying to set me up. I think someone's trying to make me kill the wrong guy, because he can sense that something's off. And then that next scene that is presented to us, but chronologically comes before that scene, we learn it was Lenny that decked her in the face, because she was just spewing all this hate towards his way. It was messed up.
Yeah, and she even said to him, I'll see you in 15 minutes, and you won't remember this.
Yeah.
That's when I learned it could be a 15-minute thing, because up till this point, it was always went to bed, woke up, and he reset. I thought it was like a 51st date situation.
When I presented this to my wife, she's like, so is it like 51st dates? It just like resets every time it's a new day? Barrymore. I was like, nah, it's like whenever he loses focus, he states that. But I was going to say, I feel like doors are a big thing. Whenever doors close, that's when he kind of breaks a psyche, and then he wakes up. He's like, where am I? Because the car door in the Natalie scene, the bathroom door in the weird escort scene, a lot of doors.
This goes back to my psychological break, because he opens the door to see his wife getting murdered by those two guys. That's the last thing he sees. That door is such a psychological trigger for him.
My man's hates doors, is what you're saying.
He hates doors. He needs to get the beads. He needs to get, the opening with the beads like the hippies have.
Yeah.
And he's not going to have these problems. See, I could fix Lenny. I could fix Lenny in a few minutes.
I could fix him.
Yeah, beads.
In the scene where she goes off on Lenny, she comes storming in, and the first thing she does, obviously, like, things are happening on the first watch. You don't catch stuff. And then the second watch,
takes the pen.
She hides all the pens, and then she goes off on Lenny because she knows that Lenny writes everything down. And she explains how Jimmy took a bunch of drugs and money to meet a guy named Teddy, and they never came back. And this guy named Dodd is asking for money, thinks Natalie has it. And then she's asking Lenny to kill Dodd. And Lenny says, this has nothing to do with me. And Natalie says, maybe it does. How do you know? Funny thing is, it totally does, because he totally killed Jimmy. And we don't know that till the very end of the movie. And then so the scene before, or I guess chronologically after he punches Natalie, he opens and closes his fist as if he feels like it's sore. And there's all these little things that are just like on screen, and you're just trying to take it all in, take all this information in. And then upon a second watch, you're thinking, oh, it's because he punched her out, just decked her in the face. So you were saying earlier how they banged.
Yeah.
I feel like they do have some sexy time. Lenny gets entangled in Natalie's life because he discovers her at the bar, because he follows notes. He uses his instinct to reach in his pockets and look for clues and notes and stuff he wrote down. This eventually leads back to Natalie's place, and this is in the beginning healthy stages of the friendship, when she hears this sad sap story and wants to help and says, you can crash here as long as you want. She shows a picture of Jimmy saying that she lost someone too. And I'm like, yeah, because Leonard totally killed him with a tire iron. I want to point something out here, Nick. The beautiful thing about this movie is that Christopher Nolan and the gang, they're hiding Easter eggs. So the picture that she shows to Lenny of her and Jimmy, one of them, he has a mustache, and then later after bed, after sexy time, he goes out into the living room. He looks at what is supposedly the same picture, same location, same clothes, but they have slightly different expressions, and Jimmy is missing a mustache and the other one. They do this a couple times, and they're trying to instill a lack of confidence, just like a movie we watched couple weeks ago, Smoke Signals. I kept dropping the term the unreliable narrator. Lenny is our vessel in this movie, and it's all through his POV, and he is such an unreliable narrator because he can't recount things correctly. And even tangibly, as an audience member, certain things aren't adding up. So you're thinking stuff is like a goof or a continuity error. No, it's purposely there.
That's a great call out.
I can't wait to call out the other one.
I don't have another one. I'm waiting for you to call it out. I'm excited to hear that.
Just going back to the sexy time real quick, if I may.
Please do.
This is one of the parts in the movie where I think Lenny is retaining one of the longer time periods of his focus, because it's daytime when he arrives at Natalie's, and then she shows him the picture of her and Jimmy, and then they go bang, and then they're doing their pillow talk, and Lenny's just monologuing while Natalie is just listening, laying on his torso. He hits us with a damn line here. You know, they say time heals all wounds, and Lenny says, "How am I supposed to heal if I can't feel time?" And I was just like, I just covered my mouth. I was like, "Oh, damn."
Good line.
How can he heal? So he drops this line and during pillow talk of all places. So he's talking about how his super dead wife is just that's the last thing he remembers. And then he gets out of bed and looks at the photo of Natalie and Jimmy, and then goes to the Polaroid and writes on it, "She will help you out of pity. She's lost someone too." And I was thinking, I think this is the longest time he's retained focus. And I think it's because he's thinking about his wife and he's going through the emotions of love and loss and grief. Again, the emotions are driving his longevity of staying focused, and they're controlling his memories. Like I was going on about Sammy, I really think that his grief was manipulating Sammy's story in his memory. So I think it was because this was the closest he came to feeling love or lust, grieving for his wife, giving into a romantic partner for a fleeting moment. But at the same time, could have been split in two, and maybe they just repeated the same conversation again after sex. But I'd like to think that he retained his focus for quite a while.
I think you're right. I think he did retain his focus there. That's a good call out. It's a really good call out.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think Natalie and Teddy are two opposites, right? Teddy's the person who says, "You should trust me because I have all this information," right? Every time he talks to Lenny, he presents him all of this information about his past, says, "You could trust me. I know X, Y, Z. I know all this. I have this information. Therefore, you should trust me." And Natalie is the person emotionally, you can trust me. You can let your guard down. And both of them end up letting Lenny down.
Yeah, I was going to say Teddy and Natalie are very similar because they both are using Lenny to a certain degree. And Teddy does feel very uncomfortable with how close Lenny is getting to Natalie. One, I think it's just a liability for his plans because he was working the Jimmy Grant's case and trying to screw him out of the money. So he doesn't like how he's staying at Natalie's spot and offers to put him up at the Discount Inn instead to kind of remove him from the Jimmy Grant storyline. Teddy's motive in the black and white sequence is to just get information from Lenny and to work this Jimmy Grant's case. And then his entire motive in the color sequence is to literally get the Jaguar. He's trying to get the car. He's trying to get the money out of the car because that's what he was working, I don't know how long, months undercover, trying to screw off Jimmy Grant and get his money and get his car and get the drug money. So it's kind of funny watching it for the second, third time because you're like, oh, he's literally just trying to get his big payoff, his big score that he was going for the entire time. But he doesn't like Lenny mixing it up with Natalie because he's like, hey, Jimmy's dead. Like, I just want to get the car and get the money and let's move on to the next hit, Lenny, buddy boy. So that's when he plants a seed into Lenny's head saying, oh, you can't trust her, because he's trying to keep Lenny as a personal hitman, undercover guy. And he insists that Natalie is not the right person that he is. And he forces Lenny to actually write this on her Polaroid. And Lenny writes it. And I did catch this the first time. The font that he writes it in is completely different. And I think that's pretty obvious.
Your pen's different too.
You're nodding your head. Yeah. And again, it's Lenny's instincts.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything he knows about himself, it's to not, like you said, trust anybody and take their word for a scripture. So when he says, write this down, write it. Because Teddy knows that he writes stuff down and he goes off his own notes. But Lenny's smart and he knows not to trust it. So I think that was a coded way of saying this is an unreliable source. Can't trust her. And then the very next thing we see is he pulls out Teddy's Polaroid and it says, don't believe his lies. And then he immediately crosses that out. So his instinct is saving his trajectory in this movie. It's guiding him for sure. Last thing I want to leave off with Natalie, when she does hand off the envelope to Lenny for John G's license information, he's walking away. He's like, all right, cool. I got my wife's killer. Natalie questions, oh, like, what's it matter? You're not even going to know that you did it because you're just going to forget. And Lenny says, it doesn't make a difference if I know about it or if I don't. Just because there are things I don't remember doesn't mean my actions are meaningless. We're hit with Lenny's drive in that scene.
Yeah, I mean, the story's full of compelling characters, each of them with their own motivation and each of their own way to try and manipulate a man who forgets everything the morning of, or after you don't see him for 30 minutes. So the amount of effort that these characters put into manipulating him as well is crazy. And the more you gets unfolded throughout the story by working backwards it's there's so many, I wouldn't necessarily call all of them twists, but there's a ton of oh shit moments the more you learn about these
revelations.
Characters. Yeah.
So Teddy obviously hates Natalie, and I think that's a perfect place to move on to. Let's talk about Teddy. I think Teddy is the person I have the most notes on.
Yeah, we're let's get deep, buddy.
So he gets capped and clapped right off the bizat. And we're just like, oh shit, Joey Pants pissed his pants because he's hella dead, bitch.
Super dead.
Yeah, for me, he's the main antagonist of this movie for sure. And we're really just thrown into it with a non-chronological order because one of the first questions I had was, why is he going to this abandoned building where he ends up killing Teddy in the first place? And why is it also the same place where he kills Jimmy? Because all Lenny says is that he has a lead. And then later on in a scene with Natalie, she does give Lenny the address to the abandoned building and the restaurant scene, suggesting that he take care of this John G, who he thinks is the real killer, aka Teddy. And she knew about this place because a guy she knew, quote unquote, Jimmy, used to do big drug deals there. We're just presented with like a mysterious setting, just like Leonard, where am I? What am I doing? And we get all the information afterwards. So when we hit the second color scene of the movie in the abandoned building, Teddy and Leonard, they roll up to the scene and there's a pickup truck outside. And Teddy says, oh, that's been here for years. And on the first viewing, you're thinking, all right, like Teddy is a cop or whatever. He just knows what's up. Cool. Second watch, you're like, what a fucking liar. Because that is totally Leonard's truck that he drove up a couple days ago. So like the perspective of characters changes drastically on multiple rewatches. And Teddy's, I think, has the strongest effect of that.
Yeah, Teddy was a wildly interesting character. Your feeling towards Teddy, obviously you see him get capped in the first scene, but he's unlikable the entire movie. He's untrustable. Seems like a swindler, right? He's just trying to manipulate Lenny, again, like I said, in a way that is by presenting facts to him, trying to gain trust, gain a rapport. He's a talker. He's a shyster.
He's a total shyster.
Total shyster. And again, one of the reasons I don't believe his story at the end is because he'll say anything to get what he wants or what best benefits him. And so, like you said, the whole point of the story...
Sorry to hit you right there, but I don't think that was his motive in that moment. I think he was really just laying into him because he's had it with this repetition. This is always new to Lenny. Every moment is just a new day, a new moment. But for Teddy, he's like, oh my God, let me just like vent to you and just tell you everything right now. Doesn't fucking matter. Your dumb ass is not going to remember this. That's the only reason why I think it's true, because I think he just had it.
Could be. Or I think he was manipulating him so that he wouldn't kill him. But Natalie was also manipulating him in that moment to hit her so that she could get him to go and kill Dodd. That was her point of turning on him.
So what was Teddy trying to do in that moment?
Not die.
By leaning into him and talking shit to him? and giving him this big info drop, the bomb drop.
Yeah, because Leonard was going to kill him. Leonard was going to kill him because he was suspicious of Jimmy after Jimmy said something about Sam. He said, this isn't right. This isn't the right guy. Teddy, you just made me kill this guy. What the hell, man? And so he was getting hostile with Teddy, and Teddy, as a way out of it, decided, well, I've been confusing him and manipulating him by giving him this overload of information, this whole movie. If I can do that here, I can confuse him and he's not going to kill me. And he'll forget about it tomorrow. And the backfire was, in my belief, the psychological break came through where he wrote down the license plate and then eventually went back to kill him.
I think if his motivation was to live and not die, I don't think he would say all that. I think he would just say, calm him, sit him down, say, sorry, like this doesn't feel right because you already killed the real killer. Because there was a moment of sincerity that I believe from Teddy, because he said, I was the one that believed you, and I, honest to God, thought that you were going to snap back to reality. Whoa, there goes gravity. After you killed the real killer. And then Teddy was honestly trying to help him in the beginning by trying to get vengeance and revenge. And then once he saw that it didn't work, he saw it as a lost cause and something that he can exploit. I think if his motivation was to live and get out of that situation, I think he would just explain that in a nicer way and not just give an information dump about how he's been exploiting him the entire time.
But I think that goes with Teddy's whole reputation of the entire movie. He's been giving him these info dumps to say, I know you and I care about you. And so I think this is just in character for Teddy. I also thought it was weird. I'm not quite sure what it means when Lenny finally did leave his motel room and go to the lobby to meet with Teddy, John Gamble, and he said, Officer Gamble. Teddy kind of looked around like, oh yeah, I'm not even sure he's a cop.
Oh shit. No. Well, you know what? You can't believe anything you see in this movie or hear or read off a note.
That could have been Teddy manipulating him.
But Bert, our homeboy Bert, the guy from Sons of Anarchy and Too Fast, Too Furious.
And Batman Begins as Flash.
Naturally.
Yeah.
What's his face?
Mark Boone Jr.
Mark Boone Jr. Mark Boone Jr., he was an informant or like an associate of Jimmy. So I think he didn't want him to kind of shout out his name in case he got connected to the Jimmy Grant's case. Or if he's seen his face around because Teddy, aka John Gamble, was in cahoots and working Jimmy on his little side deal. Jimmy knows Lenny because Bert narked him out, because when Teddy puts him up at the discount inn, and obviously Lenny needs to snap photographs of where he's living, what his car is, who his friends are. Bert takes notice of this and says, oh, this guy's scoping out the place. I need to tell Jimmy, because they do a lot of drug deals out of the discount inn. So that could have been because he just didn't want to advertise that he was a cop in like a shady hotel, but I won't rule it out. I can't rule it out. I can't disprove that he could totally not be a cop.
I'm just saying he hasn't told Lenny a truth this entire time. And then in his most desperate moment, he gives this information dump, which actually kind of goes to my nitpicks. And I'm just going to bring it up now, where he talks about, yeah, we killed the real John G. His death is real. Your wife died from this way. The whole time Lenny talks about the only thing you can trust is evidence. Like if I'm Teddy, I'm going to the county clerks in San Francisco. If I'm going to be manipulating this guy, I'm getting a death certificate for his wife for cause of death. I'm going to have pictures of him with a thumbs up next to a guy who's John G. I'm going to have a newspaper clipping of this guy dying. I'm going to have a newspaper clipping of him surviving the attack. There's no evidence carried along.
Do you need all that if he has short-term memory loss?
That's his whole thing. That's Lenny's whole thing is I have to have a picture or a note or a police report or a file, something. He says it all the time. Something I can feel, something I can see. That's a fact. And if you're Teddy,
but Teddy
and you
just
know
wanted
that,
no, Teddy wanted to keep him going. He wanted to keep him think that his killer was still out there. So I think a death certificate of his wife didn't have anything to do with that.
I'm saying if you had to get to this point where he might kill you, I don't know. I'd have a silver bullet in my back pocket. All I'm saying is Teddy hasn't told the truth the whole movie, and then I'm not inclined to believe him at the end.
No, you're not. You're not.
When he gives the information dump, which again, whole point of the movie, whose story can I trust?
Absolutely. And Lenny can't even trust himself. He trusts his little Polaroids because he does end up capping Teddy because he reads, "Don't believe his lies." And then at the very beginning of the movie, it says he is the one, kill him. And then he attacks Teddy, murks his ass. Before Teddy says, "You don't have a clue, do you? You have no idea who you are or what you've become," which has a totally different impact after watching this for a couple times. Because as we'll learn, this is not what it actually seems. The actual John G is dead. Lenny has almost assumed a new identity with the new car, the new clothes, the new narrative that he created for himself by the end of this movie. So in a sense, Teddy is kind of right with this one. Although he's not the wife's killer, he's definitely Lenny's abuser. And it's just a different type of revenge that we're seeing here under totally different circumstances, which in turn makes Teddy correct with this statement. So Teddy wants to go down to the basement and explain it all because I guess Jimmy's corpse is still down there. But Lenny just caps him, which was the right move after all the gaslighting that he's gone through from Teddy.
Yeah, I think for Lenny, his main point, he would have been better off sticking to where he said, you have to trust your instincts, you have to trust your system, you have to trust all this. And when he gets into trouble is when he goes outside of that. Trust Natalie, trust Teddy to go to this place. And Jimmy Grant is the guy, that wasn't figured out by Lenny. That's what was told to him by Teddy. That was manipulated by Teddy. So whenever he steps out of his instincts, even outside of his whole memory loss, that's when the path starts. Yeah.
And so we see this Polaroid of Teddy because obviously Lenny has tattoos and Polaroids and keeps notes of everybody and little snippets of who they are, a short little character bio, if you will. And then so the "don't believe his lies," we see this all movie in the color sequence. And we do see when this is written, this is after the whole big reveal that Teddy bomb drops on Lenny. And he writes down the license plate number as a fact. And he writes on his Polaroid, "Don't believe his lies." And this starts his game that Lenny sets up for himself. And then below the "don't believe his lies," this is when he writes, "He is the one, kill him." And this is written at the very beginning of the movie. And this is at the beginning of the second present day scene, which is the end of the following scene after he gets an envelope from Natalie. It's getting confusing.
Yeah.
Gets an envelope from Natalie containing a copy of the driver's license belonging to a John Edward Gamble, a.k.a. Teddy, a.k.a. another John G, for Lenny to find. And then the matching license plate to the number he has tattooed on his leg, which happens during those last scenes of the movie when he slams on his brakes right outside the tattoo shop, gets the license plate number tattooed to his thigh, with the final selling point being when he looks in the mirror and sees John G raped and murdered my wife. We've been seeing this phrase, "don't believe his lies," all movie, and that's been driving his choices. And then it's just interesting to see him write that at the very end of the movie and write "he is the one, kill him" at the very beginning of the movie, when this is the ultimate ending chronologically of the Teddy Lenny saga. It's wild. Again, watching this for like a second rewatch, going back, retrospect, you're just learning, picking up all these things. Teddy says that Lenny said that someone was trying to get him to kill the wrong guy and that notes are unreliable and that he has a lead on where to find them. Another thing that just kind of drops a hint, foreshadows stuff, is when Lenny and Teddy are talking about getting rid of Dodd. They march him outside with a gun to his back, and Teddy's like, "Oh, what makes you think I have a gun?" Because he's playing dumb, like he's not a cop. He's just like a rando friend. And Lenny reveals that he has a gun. And he says, "I don't think they'd let someone like me carry a gun." And Teddy says, "I hope not," under his breath, because he knows that Lenny is, if he found out, he'd cap him, which he does.
He ultimately does. Yeah, I have nothing more to add on Lenny. I can keep going back to the well on this one. The reason I think it's a psychotic break is more of what you were saying. I was thinking about it as you were saying it. It's that break that makes him go off script, right? There's no reason for him to write down that license plate. And then his instincts, right? Everything he's being fed is manipulation, right? It's Teddy feeding him this information. And he says, I think somebody's setting me up. I think somebody's trying to get me to kill the wrong guy. If he trusts his instinct, even without his memory, he would be better off.
With that, I just want to talk about the finale of the black and white flashback sequence. Just kind of wrap it up on Teddy's story arc in this movie. So we learn it has been Teddy this whole time with Lenny on the phone, the mysterious man on the phone, and the black and white sequence. And then he goes to meet him in the motel lobby. I think this is actually the longest on screen time that Lenny has held his focus, because he has a lead. He meets up with Teddy and he wholeheartedly believes he's going to catch his wife's murderer. And this is the Jimmy Grant's climax at the very end. When he goes to the abandoned building, it's actually intercutting with colorized images of his wife. And again, he's maintained focus from his phone call with Teddy from his hotel room, through the lobby, through the car ride, up to this abandoned building. When he gets into the building, the intercuts of his wife, and I just want to shout out the wife, was it Georgia Fox of CSI fame? Mm-hmm. But she's just credited as Leonard's wife in this movie. These intercuts of Leonard's wife, she's actually doing the same things that Lenny is doing on screen. Whether it be he's turning around, or he's looking through a window, or he's opening a door. And again, I think it's just because his love and emotion for his wife runs so deep that this is when his superpower kicks in and he's able to override his short-term memory loss. It's just that grief and loss of his wife. Like we said with Jimmy, he thinks he's the wrong guy, and he says he'll know when he kills the right man. And Teddy did sincerely believe him, but he wasn't too sure. And then he definitely knew that it wasn't the case, because when they found and killed the real John G over a year ago, Lenny doesn't even remember. And even Lenny's precious Polaroids didn't work, because Teddy did take a picture of Lenny after he did it, and he's pointing to a blank spot on his chest, on his heart. And in a different scene with Natalie, she was going over all the tattoos, and they make it a point to point out the bare chest over the heart. And they say, oh, what's that for? And Lenny says, that's when I finally do it. I'll get a tattoo. So again, Christopher Nolan, they're just dropping Easter eggs in the movie, because in the black and white sequence, this Polaroid picture is slipped underneath his motel door in a very ominous envelope that says, take my call. And then he opens it up, and it's a Polaroid of Lenny pointing to that very spot on his heart. And if I was a 300 IQ audience member, I would have caught this. I'm not. And then after a second watch, I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So it's revealed that he did kill John G, the real John G, who ended up just being a rando tweaker.
We're told.
During the big reveal with Teddy, Teddy is quoted to say, you don't want the truth. You want to make up your own truth, just like your police file. And this is referring to when Lenny removed the 12 pages from his file, because he, according to Teddy, wanted to create his own puzzle that he could never solve. Lenny writes down, after this whole big revelation, don't believe his lies on Teddy's picture. He burns the evidence of dead Jimmy. And then at this moment, he elects Teddy to be his new John G, which I thought was gangster.
Yeah, he needs a John G. He needs a John G to chase.
He needs a drive.
This is why, and we could chalk it up to multiple things. The emotional response, called a psychological coping mechanism or safety mechanism, but there's definitely something inside of him that doesn't want to heal and wants to continue down this path of destruction, because that's all he has left.
I feel like our talking points are just going to blend into this whole breakdown. So like one of my talking points was going to be like, what happens next? What do you think happens after the fact?
I think he continues to go on killing.
Does he keep killing John and James G's? Because if he does, I need to go into hiding.
Yeah, you should not be.
Is he the Zodiac killer?
You need to not be around. Yeah, no, I think that's what it is. Either he will die but I don't think he'll ever accept what it is. I think this is just a cycle that he is stuck in.
Does he ever truly stop? Is what I'm asking. because he's stuck in a time loop
in his head
of a living hell.
Well, you mentioned the quote where he's like, how can I heal if I can't feel time? So he can't
heal.
He can never heal. And so this is the cycle he's stuck in forever. Now, without Teddy, I don't know who's funding his life anymore, holding him up at the motel. So I don't know how that's all going to go. But I think this will continue on because he'll never be able to cope with the fact that his wife's dead.
Yeah, I want to believe that he puts it to rest, and I want to have some sort of finality by the end or beginning of the movie when he executes Teddy. We obviously don't see what happens chronologically after this moment, but I'd like to think that he got that tattoo on his chest and said, I did it. But I don't know. He could just keep going and keep on murdering John and James G's.
The issue, if he got that tattoo after he killed him, that would be some sort of proof to the audience whether Teddy did or did not do it. Because if he was able to break out of the loop by killing Teddy, that means he actually found his killer. We're not allowed to know that. Nolan won't let us.
On topic of that, Chris Nolan, when he premiered this in Venice, in the press conference afterwards, he explained how he intended the ending to be taken. And then his brother Jonathan told him afterwards, hey, you actually have no right to explain that because of the ground rules that you set for your own movie, which is the subjective first-person POV of Leonard, who lives his life with so much uncertainty. So your interpretation, Christopher Nolan, is no more valid than Nick Justice's interpretation of this movie, or James Gordon's interpretation of this movie, or John G's interpretation of this movie. We're at the mercy of our own perceptions. Is how Nolan kind of walked away from that conversation. And just like the end of Inception, we don't truly know what happens after the end of the movie. It's all up to interpretation. That's how you do it, Luc Besson.
Don't even bring up that son of a bitch.
Fun fact, Nolan started writing Inception only a year or two after Memento. So it took about 9 years.
He was in the mind melting phase.
Okay, well, let's wrap it up with Lenny, our main character.
Didn't we just do Lenny?
We did Teddy.
I could have sworn we switched to Lenny like 10 minutes ago.
I don't appreciate this meta joke.
It's not a meta joke. I'm pretty sure we switched to Lenny like 10 minutes ago.
No, I did my whole wrap up with Teddy. Swear.
Okay. Well, we've been talking about Lenny for the last 10 minutes.
Well, I mean, we're talking about everybody, but no, like when you listen back to the tape where I said I'll wrap it up on Teddy.
At one point you said, well, let's bring it to Lenny. And so I thought that was
I did not say that. I swear to God. We'll put money on it. I did not say that.
Put money on it. It may not have been those exact words, but you mentioned like that brings us to Lenny. You said like that brings us to Lenny.
I did not say that, but let's just keep the train moving here. So, which brings us to Lenny. So, like we said, all movie, he takes pictures, he leaves notes for himself, he has tattoos. I just want to kind of run through his tattoos that I paused and looked at. So, on his torso, he has a lot of upside down messages so that he can read them from his point of view. So, on his sternum, there's words that say photograph house, car, friends, and foes. I thought this one was funny. On his stomach, upside down, it says eat, like he forgets to eat. And then upside down on his left waist, it says don't trust your weakness. On another one on his right arm, there's one that says consider the source, memory is treachery. Now this hits close to home, given that in the movie, Lenny says you can't trust memories, and he believes that Sammy Jankis killed his wife. But again, it was actually Lenny. It was actually Lenny that did that. So you can't trust your memory. Your recount of Sammy Jankis, it's Lenny. It's Lenny. 100%.
Wow, you're falling into the Teddy trap there of just calling it what it is. You want to be a Teddy?
Amongst these tattoos are facts. One of these being the license plate from the John G. And he's actually dumbfounded when he discovers that he has the license plate tattooed on his thigh. He's probably thinking, when the hell did I get this? Why have I not turned this in? How is this guy not dead in an instant? And then so that kicks off the beginning of our movie.
Lenny is the manifestation of a broken man who is trying at all costs to forget. He is forced to forget, either physically or psychologically, and wants to forget. And so I think that's why he's so easily manipulated. It's because he's so willing to believe anything other than what is real. And so if Natalie tells him something that's real, he'll believe it. If Teddy tells him something that's real, if somebody slides something under a door and tells him it's real, if somebody calls on the phone and tells him it's real, he talks about trusting his instincts all the time, but he rarely does because I don't think he trusts himself, and he'd rather trust other people because he's in such a vulnerable psychological position that he allows himself to get jerked around.
I got to disagree there because there's a bunch of points in the movie where he's like not wanting to believe what he's hearing. Like when he's in the car with Teddy and he says, don't trust her. And he's like, okay. And then when Natalie's like, who punched me in the face? It was Dodd. It was Dodd. And then in that scene, he's like, something's not right. Something's telling me that you're lying to me. And he does say how he reads body language. He reads people's eyes and what they're doing. So I can't agree with that 100%.
But then what happens in the following scene?
Of which one? I gave multiple examples.
All those examples.
He trusts his instinct.
He eventually breaks.
No, because
when Natalie comes in with the bruised eyes and she says it's Dodd, he goes and takes Dodd.
Well, for the Teddy scene, he crosses out his lie and says, I can't believe this guy.
He does. But in every other instance, Teddy has been manipulating him all the way up to this point.
And then in the Natalie scene, that's when he resets.
Yeah.
So in the Natalie scene, she's saying like, oh, like who did this? Dodd did this to me, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, something's not adding up here. Something's not adding up here. And then it's that scene afterwards where she's berating him with cuss words. And he's like, I got to write this down. I got to write this down. I got to write this down. And then he loses focus and then it resets.
The scene after it in the movie.
No, I think his instincts are strong and he doesn't just trust anybody. He only trusts his own notes and his own instinct.
Yeah, but his notes have been manipulated. I think that was going to be him talking points by others, right? Natalie has lied to him to get those notes onto his pictures. She pities
Which
you.
Ones?
She'll help you because she also lost somebody. She's not helping you. She's manipulating. But
she doesn't know about his notes. She's not manipulating notes.
But she is manipulating him, so he's written down wrong notes. He talks about not being able to trust your notes. His notes are manipulated. I mean, everything Teddy's been feeding him for his notes. His whole storyboard of who John G is for this Jimmy Grants guy has been manipulated by Teddy. All of his notes are tainted. He taints his own notes. The notes are not to be trusted.
No, he does that to his own notes. I don't think anyone's controlling what he writes down, though.
No one's controlling what he writes down, but they are influencing what he writes down. Like Natalie is not to be trusted, right? He thinks Natalie pities him and is going to help him. In reality, it's the exact opposite. Natalie's using him.
Yeah, no, she does.
She doesn't help him at all.
She's using him, but she also does pity him. And she does help him because she runs the license plate.
She says she'll run the license plate. I think she only does it because it comes up as... Yeah, but the only reason she gives it to him is because it comes up as Teddy.
She didn't know it was him. She just ran the license plate and then came up as John Gamble by chance.
She's using him because...
She literally says, I'm helping you because you helped me. That's literally the motivation. Because he took care of Dodd. So she wholeheartedly invites him into her home, manipulates him to take care of Dodd because she's in a scary situation because this big guy's coming after her for money and drugs and says, oh, you know what? I'm going to manipulate Lenny to help me take care of the Dodd problem. Now I feel like something is owed and due towards Lenny. So now it's my turn to help him out. So she is doing tit for tat there. She is doing tit for tat.
All of this stems from her manipulating him because he killed her boyfriend.
But she doesn't know that.
She does know that because he showed up in his car, in his clothes.
She's suspicious. And she's like, what the hell is this all about? But she doesn't know that. At least it's never brought up.
It is. It's never brought up.
Yeah.
And so if we go through the movie chronologically, he comes over. She basically manipulates him into hitting her for him to go kill Dodd, who she says is after him, but we don't know that Dodd's after her. That's never been proven in the movie. Dodd might just be a loose end.
Could be, but then what would be the motivation to kill him?
Maybe she wants to go find Jimmy's money because we don't know Dodd's after her because all she does is manipulate him into hitting her, go sit in her car, and then come back frantic. She never was told that Dodd's after her. That wasn't real panic. That was all fake panic.
The motivation doesn't line up for why she would want Dodd dead if he wasn't coming after her.
But the motivation for Dodd going to kill her doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, because Jimmy's missing and that's his partner. And the drugs are missing and the money's missing.
So it could just as easily, she could be thinking that Dodd took the money, so she wants him dead.
No, she's not in the drug game. She's just the girlfriend of a drug dealer. So Dodd is who's in the drug game is like, hey, you know Jimmy. You're close with him. Where the hell is he? Tell me what you know. And then she tells Dodd about the Jaguar because Lenny's driving it. And that's how he gets into a physical altercation with Dodd later in the movie.
I don't think she tells Dodd about the Jaguar. She lied about that.
She does. No, she does, because she tells Lenny, like, I told him about the car because I had to tell him something.
Yeah, because she said she got beat up, but Dodd never beat her up.
He never beat her up.
She said, he was hitting me. I had to give her something. That's a lie.
He could have still approached her and asked for information.
But that's still fully manipulating Lenny for no reason other than personal gain.
I never said she never manipulated him. I just said that she manipulated him, but she also helped him out.
Yeah, I don't think she helped him out at all in anything.
Per conversation with Teddy, Lenny does state that facts are what help you solve a case. And that's how he did it when he invested insurance claims. And then in this conversation, this is when he points out how memories are unreliable. They can change the color of a car or the size of a room. And he was talking about Sammy Jankis with Teddy. And this is when he was talking about being suspicious of Sammy and that he was faking it, because he thought that he could recognize him in the eyes. He thought there was a sense of familiarity whenever he interacted with Sammy. This is when Leonard states that Sammy didn't have a system, whereas he does. He has his whole routine. He conditions himself and states that he does go off instinct, which is how he knows to check for these photos and check for these notes and his tattoos. And Lenny does, I caught this, he does flex his instinct when he's finding the Jaguar, what we think is his car in the beginning. However, we learned that it's actually Jimmy's. But he does find his own car when he's being pursued by Dodd in that foot chase that you brought up earlier. And I also thought it was funny that Dodd didn't recognize the Jaguar with the shot out window that was parked in the small motel parking lot that he's staying at.
True.
I'm like, okay. Lenny's like totally not hiding out in your motel room. Nolan does actually hint, like we see at the very end of this movie, how Lenny does elect Teddy to be his new John G and to chase after him and make it a puzzle for him to solve and make it a game almost for him to chase this white whale of a suspect. He does hint how Lenny actively partakes in manipulating himself, just as he does at the end. And this comes in a foreshadowing scene of him hiring an escort to be there as he's sleeping to trick him into thinking that his wife is still alive. So even earlier in the movie, we're getting glimpses of Lenny playing himself literally so that he can just fool his psyche and make it seem like everything is okay just for a fleeting moment. And he brings her belongings as props. And then in a different scene, we see Lenny burning these belongings, and one of them being a clock, suggesting that he has no relationship or even use for time, because like we stated in that other scene where when he did the hardest line of this movie, how am I supposed to heal if I can't feel time? I caught that symbolism there, and I like that. During our final scene of the movie, Lenny drives to the tattoo parlor when we get more flash cuts to his wife. And then in one of these cuts, she lays on his torso, and as his shirt is open, there is that tattoo of "I've done it" on his heart. Now, I want to talk about that after I wrap up my last note here of Lenny. But Lenny's instinct is what drives the entire movie's plot. And when he made the decision to write down "Don't believe his lies," it caused him to not give up the Jag or the bag full of money to Teddy at the tattoo parlor. It also motivated him to cross out the "Do not trust her" regarding Natalie note, among many other things. So I want to end on Lenny, that it's really his instinct that is his saving grace of his character and the driving force of where he's supposed to be at the end of this movie or beginning of this movie.
Yeah, not shocking. I disagree. I disagree with that. I think his lack of following his instincts is what leads him astray, right? Trusting others instead of himself, right? Having Teddy tell him to go to this location, right? To kill Jimmy Krantz, do everything else. The slipping of, even when he's talking on the phone, he looks at his tattoo that says, "Don't answer the phone, don't talk on the phone." And even after he looks at that tattoo, he's still seen talking on the phone, right? He's ignoring his own instincts there because he's so embedded in what he's trying to do. And the only thing that saves him is when his instincts fail, and when the trust that he put into others fail. The only thing that comes out to save him, I believe, is his subconscious that eventually says, "We have to kill Teddy." That's the only thing I think that saves him. So I think he betrays his instincts are good.
I think that's instincts because he's like, I got to kill Teddy.
I think that's subconscious because he has no reason to kill. If his instinct was to kill Teddy, he would have killed him on the spot instead of setting up this game for himself to keep playing out over the next few days. Right? That's like a psychological savior instead of his instincts. If his instincts were to kill Teddy, he should have just killed him on the spot.
Well, that's what I was saying about the fight or flight thing. If his fight response was to kill Teddy, why not just do it on the spot?
Yeah. So I think he has the flight response, and I think he has this subconscious that found a way for him to do it, not in the face of confrontation, but by playing out this elongated ruse of his that he's putting on. I think he has good instincts. I think there's multiple times in the story where his instincts take over and he makes the right decision. The problem is that he does not stick with them and eventually falls back onto these other more human pitfalls of emotion or trusting somebody based on authority, being a cop, having information, being emotionally there. And then even memories where he says, ask cops, like memories, human memories suck. So all these things he does end up falling back on, but I agree. He has good instincts and you see flashes of it and you're like, come on, stick with those. And then eventually he ends up turning away from them. And then that's where he finds himself in most of the shit.
Okay. Well, that's all I got for characters.
They're heavy characters.
All right. Well, that does it for, I guess plot talk, character chat, maybe is what we'll say.
Memento moments.
Memento members. Nick, do you have any nitpicks?
Nitpicks. Yeah. So it was just two. The scene we were talking about earlier where Natalie takes all the pens from her house and then he can't write it down. Like, my guy, you got to have a pen on you at all times. You got to have like 3 pens on you at all times. You have one pen in each pocket, then a pen in your breast pocket, at least. Yeah,
that's actually a fat rookie move by Lenny.
Big rookie move, which, every day's a new day. So, maybe you make rookie moves. A tape recorder would have also been really nice.
I saw that online. However, the counter was he's not good on the phone. He likes to see people face to face when he's talking to them. He can't trust phones. He can't trust tape recorders.
I feel like tape recorders and phones are different, but hey, it makes for a great movie.
No, because you can't see. You gotta see. He has to see who he's talking to because he reads body language and looks for visual cues and looks in the eyes.
I'm saying to take your own notes. Just take your own notes real quick.
But I think it's faster to read notes than it is to listen to a recording, right? It's like little quick little cliff notes in the pocket instead of audio notes,
I would have multiple ways to record down information if this is the only way I could remember things.
If Lenny was in today's times, it would be a nightmare with Photoshop and AI and voice manipulation. He'd be lost.
Dude, a modern day Memento where a guy is just being fed information from dude, okay, real quick, not to get too sidetracked.
Oh, no.
Sci-fi movie idea. Guy wakes up. The only contact he has is with an AI chatbot, like an AI bot that is gone rogue and just shows him things he wants to see and makes up things. And we don't know what it's making up and not. Memento 2, Rise of the AI.
Memento meets 2001: The Space Odyssey. Okay, got it.
I'm into it. I'll start writing it.
My nightmare. My nitpick is the car window. We clearly saw Dodd shoot it out And there's a fun reveal in the very beginning of the movie when, again, Teddy is really trying to get his hands on that Jaguar, and he's super jealous of it because is that bag of money just in the trunk the entire movie?
It appears so, yeah.
Because Lenny can't remember that there's money back there or even know it's there. But Teddy says, hey, roll up your window. And Lenny goes to roll up the window, and some glass shattered debris kind of crumbles off when he goes to hit the trigger. But my nitpick is that you can see the window. You can see the very tip of the very real unbroken window peek over the rubber seal. That's the continuity error right there that we were looking for, everybody. And do you have any talking points for me, Nick, after all the talking we've done?
I just did want to bring up the pictures in the notes. That's our real key to the information. I think there's a really good thing the movie does throughout the course of the movie, not chronologically, but throughout the runtime of the movie, where it gets less and less trustworthy. Like even his notes on his pictures that we find out, we think that they're pretty safe, right? We trust Natalie. We don't know Dodd. We see what we see about Teddy and all this information, and we see what he has written down, and we trust it for the most part. And then as the movie goes on, like you said, we start to realize he's an untrustworthy narrator. The stories are convoluted. These people aren't who the notes say that they are. This whole window that we had into these other characters and how Lenny perceives them is just shattered as we go through the film. I thought that was really interesting how Lenny's trust of everybody is falling apart, but the audience's trust of everybody is falling apart too. To at the end, when you're like, dude, none of the notes that Lenny wrote down about these people are true. None of their motivations that we thought. And so we're taking on the same journey that Lenny is. And I thought it was just really good storytelling by Nolan.
Yeah. And all these notes are very subjective because again, we're at the mercy of Lenny's POV. And you do get a hint that these aren't 100% true because you see that stuff on his notes and on pictures have been crossed out. Mm-hmm. So you're thinking, oh, this person was he had access to drugs. Oh no, he was a drug dealer. Oh, like she can't be trusted. Oh, never mind. She's going to help you. It's riddled with inconsistencies. And it's kind of like when you learn as a kid that lies are a real thing. Like same thing with this movie. When you're watching this movie and you're like, I'm taking everything for face value. And then you discover by the end of this movie, oh, that wasn't actually his car. The tattoo he got of the license plate is just of this other person who is not the original killer or assailant. Everything is not what it seems. It's a meta experience because as Lenny learns that he can't trust everything he sees and everything that is said to him, same thing for the audience. We can't take in all these quote unquote pieces of evidence in this murder mystery manhunt story for face value because there's more than meets the eye for these snippets of physical evidence and dialogue and things that happen. You just, by the end of it, you learn like you can't trust anybody. I don't know what is completely true. I don't know what is completely false. I just have to do my best to make sense of it.
I think one thing Nolan is really good at, Christopher Nolan is really good at, is he understands how audiences view movies and experience movies. And so he knows that the audience's first inclination is to trust the main character. And then he's going to flip that on its head. And I understand how my audience is going to view this. And I understand how to take them down a path and then branch that path or twist that path. And that's what makes good twists
good.
That's just what makes good twists is that, yeah, that's what makes them good is you have to trust what's happening in the movie for you to be confused, to then later be confused.
And finally, the last thing I want to bring up is the I've done it tattoo. There's that Polaroid that Teddy took of Lenny where he's pointing to that vacant spot on his chest that he was waiting to put a tattoo after he killed his wife's killer. We see at the very end, there's a flash cut of his actual wife laying on his torso with that tattoo of I've done it. And my question is just, what's up with this? Is this real? Is this fake? What's going on here?
I think this is all in Lenny's head.
It's a fantasy.
Exactly. However, this does, I think, support the theory that if he's fantasizing about this after the fact, maybe this is the end of his anterograde amnesia. Maybe this is the breaking point.
Like he doesn't have short-term memory loss anymore?
Maybe.
Oh.
Maybe this is the end of his psychotic break. I don't know. But it's definitely in that moment, for at least, he feels fulfilled. And I guess this goes back to what he was talking to Natalie about, where it doesn't matter if I remember it or not. This has to happen. So maybe this is just a fleeting moment of a fantasy where to him, he feels fulfilled and successful. And then in the morning, he'll not remember it and have to go down this journey again to feel some sort of fulfillment.
Yeah. Because it's in this scene where we have the big reveal at the end from Teddy, and then he snaps a photo of the Jaguar, writes "my car" on it, wears Jimmy's clothes, drives away, is thinking to himself, and then it's intercut with this fantasy scene of his wife. They're in bed, and then he has the tattoo of "I've done it." And the reason I think this is fantasy is because most, if not all, of the tattoos on his torso are written backwards so that he can read them in the mirror. But this one is written straight on. It's not backwards. So I think that's the clue that it's not real. And it kind of mirrors the ending monologue that he has. One of his last lines is, "We all need mirrors to remind ourselves of who we are. I'm no different." I would say that was his last words of the movie, but technically his last words of the movie was, "Now, where was I?" And then it goes to credits.
Which brings you to believe we're just going to repeat the cycle again and again and again.
We hope we don't. Okay, hey, let's get into our mini pops, our poppies, the cornies. Nick, you have a best weapon in this movie.
So I'm going to go with a boring answer, but I want to explain. So it's Leonard's Beretta, in which he kills the intruders with. The gun itself is pretty standard, but what a shot to open up the door. This guy's on top of your wife strangling her, and you pop him right in the side of the dome. Clean shot. I mean, Leonard's got a background. Leonard has killed a man before. That's not just like, that's a clean shot, dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say the most effective weapons in this movie are probably the handguns. There's a Smith & Wesson that he gets from Dodd and ends up just executing point blank, New Jack City style, on Teddy. But I like how you brought up his skill set as a marksman.
Came out of nowhere.
The instant reaction, just that's fight. That's not flight right there. So that tells me that fucking Lenny can fight. There's no flight. That guy's built different.
Pre-incident, all fight.
Post-incident, all flight.
All flight.
Yeah, I mean, there was the tire iron that he used on Jimmy. That was pretty vicious. And then the bottle of booze that he used on Dodd was pretty resourceful. Lenny's a pretty resourceful son of a bitch. Which brings me to the next category. Choose your fighter. Who threw down the best? I think we have the same answer here. It's that resourceful son of a bitch, Lenny.
Dude, he's really good. He was an insurance investigator, but this man has a
it's like John Wick.
Clean shot. And dude, everyone who came up against him, who tried to fight him, he just threw down on him.
6'2" Dodd. Couldn't stand a chance of a naked Lenny with a bottle of booze.
Fucked up Jimmy.
Fucked up drug dealer Jimmy with a tire iron. Clean shot with the Beretta on the attackers.
Yeah, he's built a little different. I'm curious of his past.
No, he definitely is. So Lenny is our deadliest warrior of Memento, which brings us to a low point, Nick. Who's our biggest standout piece of shit here?
I mean, it's got to be Teddy.
It's Teddy.
And the reason it's Teddy is we have disagreements on Natalie. Was she doing it for this reason? Doesn't matter what reason Teddy was doing anything for. It's all piece of shit motivation. So it's just all
no.
Teddy.
Natalie was just complex. She had her moments when she was beneficial to Lenny, but she was a complete bitch.
Yeah.
To him in that one scene. When we were watching it, my wife was saying, "You better nominate her for biggest piece of shit." And I was ready to do it. But by the end of the movie, I thought, no, it's got to be Teddy, because Teddy did nothing beneficial to Lenny. And his plan is to keep Lenny attached to his hip as his little personal pet, his tool.
Yeah.
He's just like, he's ready to ride the Lenny train to drug dealing, money bag Mr. Monopoly Man success over here.
I'm surprised, given your thoughts on it, thinking that Sammy was faking it, that you wouldn't nominate Sammy for.
No, because the compared to Teddy's the biggest piece of shit,
true.
just exploiting the crap out of someone with a disability, essentially.
We're agreement. Teddy, piece of shit.
MVP of this movie, opposite effect. Who do you got?
MVP of the movie for me, I said it earlier, I think Sammy is the MVP of this movie. Not necessarily for being a good guy, but for being so beneficial to the entire story. I think the character of Sammy, no matter how real his condition is or how real his story is, Sammy being in the movie explaining things to us, again, whether it's the theory that Leonard's projecting his story onto him or not, this guy is, the character of Sammy is crucial to the story being told and understood.
All right.
How about you?
I gotta go with Guy Pearce. I think he acted the crap out of this role. Taking the actor approach, I think Guy Pearce really carried this movie with his performance and his
absolutely,
his iteration of this character. And I think it was his idea to actually dye Lenny's hair blonde just to be more recognizable and iconic to this movie. And I gotta say, if you show up in a blue button-up shirt and a tan suit with bleach blonde hair to Halloween, I know who you are. So shout out Guy. I thought he did a good job. I thought he killed it.
Big shout out to Guy. Yeah, he did a great job.
Okay, worst scene and the best scene. Nick, do you want to go first? Do you want to do worst? Do you want to do best? What you got? What you got?
We should probably hit worst first, right?
Worst first? I like
worst
that.
First.
I'll go first on the worst. And it's obviously the worst scene, which I thought was the escort scene. Not so much because
same boat. Same boat.
And it's really just for what's happening on screen. It's not so much the filmmaking reasoning, like, oh, this scene was totally unnecessary, or I like it was shot so bad or whatever. I just didn't like it. It just made me sad. Just made me sad that he had to hire an escort to pretend to be his wife so that pretend like she was still in the room using the bathroom. It was just like, oh man.
It was weird because I was a little confused. So first off, giving her the belongings and saying, yeah, put him around the house. But this is the first time we've seen him do this. I thought he was doing it to try and maybe remember something, to maybe jog his memory. But no, it was just him being sad and lonely.
Nolan kept it in there, like I said, to just kind of drop a hint that he's willing to manipulate reality and create his own narrative, which is what we see at the very end of the movie. But I just didn't, it was just sad to me. It's very surface level. Best scene. What do you got?
The best scene for me was the scene with Natalie where she goes all psycho on him. Is that your best scene? I'm seeing you giving me a face.
I was having trouble picking between that one and just the finale, just because the big choice from Lenny at the end is so like badass and awesome. I did like the Natalie scene because it just kind of encapsulated the struggle, the conflict, and just the living hell that Lenny goes through on a day-to-day basis and what he's risking every time he opens up to somebody, because we see in this movie, I think everybody he encounters takes advantage of him. Natalie does at one point. Teddy consistently does throughout his entire career of whatever, if he's a cop or not. Bert, the motel guy, he charges him 2 rooms because he can.
The reason I loved that scene was I think it was the first time we really got a shocker moment. We knew Teddy was sketchy. We believed Natalie up to this point, the notes, her demeanor, everything she had told us. We actually had somebody we could trust in this movie for the first time. And then to see her make that, and I saw it right away because I haven't seen this movie in a while, so I did forget some of it. But
I see your code word for the best scene. It just says woman slapping. He punched her. It wasn't a slap.
Well, first he kind of like grabs her in the face and kind of pushes.
Oh yeah, he kind of like smudges her mouth, but he definitely decks her. And if I can just add on, I think what made this one of the best scenes is just like I just wanted him to punch her in the face just because of how rude she was being.
You could put pieces together, but I think it's the first time in the movie, if I'm thinking of myself watching for the first time, that I can see into the future a little bit. that I could see. I know she's had a black eye and a lip. And as soon as she starts saying that to him, the switch gets flipped. I think that moment you figure out, oh, this is happening. Oh, she's using him. And then this really makes you for me, it makes me really start to pay attention to every scene thinking, okay, what's causing this? Because again, I just took her black eye and lip for, oh, she's down on her luck. She's got slapped around by a boyfriend, a customer, who knows? And now you're starting to see everything get connected. So I just thought it was a great scene, a great reveal of it all. So I love that scene.
Shout out to Teddy just for being just an outstanding performer, for being the biggest piece of shit, for outshining that scene, because she was just a monster in that scene.
Oh,
I was ready to throw her into the gauntlet, but yeah.
He gets called retarded a few times in the movie, and I was like, I think you're misusing that word.
Yeah, throughout the R word.
It's like he's just forgetting.
Yeah, multiple people call him that. It's really uncalled for.
Jimmy does, and Natalie definitely does a few times, and calls his wife a whore.
Yeah, no, it was a lot.
Yeah, too much.
Okay, let's wrap up this section with our sarcastic selling points. Nick, what do you got?
I said it's a confusing whodunit. No, seriously, whodunit?
I said this is short-term memory loss versus cold case manhunt. The perfect combination.
Final review. Fight.
All right, let's see what the other guys are saying about 2000's Memento. Starting out with Rotten Tomatoes, the critics, 94% of the critics like this movie.
And, I mean, you could just pencil it in across the board. 94 for the people, too.
Ooh, wait. All right, time to bump it down a little bit, get a little bit real, because we're heading over to Metacritic, and they're serious over there. Metacritic critics slapped this with an 83, which translates to an 8.3 on our scale.
It does. People at an 8.9.
And now our
forgot what I was saying. Where was I?
Score. Brought to you by Remember Sammy Jankis. Jankis, and 8.4. Okay, even when we can't remember what we're saying, we know what we're saying. Nick, it is my turn to hit you with a laughable logline, and unfortunately, I have to go first and give you my popcorn points on this very high-profile movie that I feel like we had so much similar feelings about why this movie was great, but honestly, I didn't think we were going to walk away from this movie feeling so different about our interpretations of it.
That's what makes it a great movie.
That's what makes it a great movie. So let me hit you with this. My log line is, a man with short-term memory loss relies on Polaroids, handwritten notes, and his own tattoos to chase down and murder his wife's murderer many times. And my popcorn points, Nick, are you ready for this?
Hit me with them.
9.1. This is my second score that is in the nines of this podcast. Baby. And let me tell you why. My final thoughts on this movie. So the rating transcends the movie's face value. I know a lot of times we get bogged down with kudos here and shout out to this movie for doing this, even though it didn't have anything to do with the movie or the story or the characters. Rewatching this movie, the experience only enriches its depth, its meaning, the interpretation. There's even a lot of meta Easter eggs that play towards the audience. Like I said, with the picture with Natalie and Jimmy. The other one I was going to shout out, the license plate. So the license plate actually changes throughout the movie of Teddy's car. In one scene, I think it ends with 71U. And then in the final scene, it ends with 7IU. Looking at this stuff, something that you can interpret as a goof or a continuity error, they're actually purposeful seeds of evidence planted of the unreliable narrator, which is the entire meaning of this movie. So this movie is through the eyes of Lenny, and there's proof to that. We as the audience are experiencing the same kind of uncertainty that Lenny is experiencing. It only gets me that much more excited to hopefully pick up a lot more extra stuff on future rewatches. So Memento is a revenge story. It's presented in one way, but it ends up being an entirely different type of revenge story. It's introduced as an avenge story for Leonard's wife's killer, but then it ends up being a personal revenge story for Lenny. So by the end of the film, or the beginning of the film, depending on which way you're looking at it, Lenny brings his unbeknownst worst enemy to justice by leaning into what has been presented as Leonard's biggest weakness, which is this short-term memory. His own unreliability allows him to take control of his life by creating his own narrative by the end of the movie. So he fools himself by taking Jimmy's clothes, his car, claiming it as his own property, and he knowingly seals the deal with this by snapping a photo of the car and writing "my car" on it. And Teddy says, "Hey, that's not yours." And Lenny says, "It is now." So he's totally buying into his own weakness and making it his strength. And at this moment, Teddy should have been he should have caught a clue about how dangerous Lenny could be, because we get a flash of this self-awareness, which is that's the death sentence for Teddy. So he should have caught on right here, and just cut it off and cut ties with Lenny. But he's a selfish prick, so he didn't. So just as we're at the 180 degree point of this movie, we're also at the 180 degree point of Lenny's character, because for a brief moment, he knows that he can't trust anyone, and that includes himself. As stated, memories are unreliable, including your very own memories. And then with this mind-bending realization that Lenny gets hit with, he has the ability to not limit himself by taking notes and making tattoos and photos of his own accounts. He just says, "I'm going to create my own narrative. I am the story writer at the end of this." And so we learn by the end of this movie that some of those hard pieces of evidence are in fact false. And that just totally flips the movie upside down. I believe that Lenny took advantage of this brief moment in time where he heard the whole truth, whether that's the actual account from Teddy, or if you just interpret the truth that Teddy is just an abusive a-hole manipulating this guy and taking advantage of a broken human. Regardless of the truth for face value or the truth of the matter of fact, he took advantage of this revelation to make his mementos unreliable, because he knew that he would be reliable in the next moment to act on his instinct and to carry out his destiny. So while Lenny's short-term memory loss is definitely a shortcoming, it's his instinct and his own reliability that are his best qualities, as they are the driving factor that leads him into writing down "don't believe his lies," which perpetuates his choices and ultimately, chronologically, leads him to killing Teddy, his biggest abuser and antagonist. So I'm enamored with the poetic justice of this movie. I think Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, the idea of this movie is insane. The way Christopher Nolan mapped it out, write it from the audience point of view and a skewed point of view. I think this tops out at a 9.1. You kind of smooth over a lot of stuff by saying stuff is unreliable and it's up to interpretation, and that's fine and dandy, and that can kind of be your fallback for a lot of plot holes and whatnot. So I think that's why it tops out at a 9.1. However, I just think the experience of watching this movie, the acting of Guy Pearce, the cultural impact, how people can just think about this movie from years and years and years, almost like The Thing ending level of thought-provokingness. I think it just transcends time. It transcends generations. The story is cool, but the story of the story is even cooler. And I think it's one of Christopher Nolan's best movies.
Wow. High praise. Said a lot of stuff. I honestly, so you covered a lot of stuff for me. This was helpful. You articulated it very well. All right. Time for my laughable log line, followed by my popcorn points.
Tell me.
My laughable log line is it today? Is it yesterday? Well, be prepared to be confused about what day it is and have zero closure in this memory-bending psych thriller.
Yeah.
I'm torn. If I just do it.
Act on instinct.
I think I'm going to do it.
Act on instinct.
I think I have to do it. This is a 9.3. This is the highest movie we have for me that I have reviewed on this podcast. James, you said a lot of it, so I don't need to rehash that. But outside of the actual characters, which were great, outside of the actual story development, which was great, just the pacing of the story, the construction of the film, I just was enamored with. Just absolutely enamored with the way that it was built and the way the timelines were, and the way they split them up with the black and white versus the colored footage. how one timeline's working forward, one's working back. They come together in a black and white and colored mishmash there. The story it told is great. The concept, I just can't get enough of. I think it's just absolutely genius. It's enthralling. It's compelling. It's constructed so well. Usually for movies like this that are really hyped up and cult classics, I usually don't agree with critics or Rotten Tomato scores, but I think this is spot on. There, I've always enjoyed this movie. I think watching it again from this critical view on the podcast just made me really appreciate it more. Just how deep it was, and the unreliable narrator allows you to smooth over a lot of stuff, like you said. But I don't think there's that much to smooth over. I think the lack of closure is a great thing. I think it's something Nolan likes. Obviously, we mentioned Inception, but I enjoy the lack of closure. I'm not someone who needs closure in my movies. I want a movie to make me sit there and think. And, I had my thoughts about what Leonard was going through and what the reality was. You had your thoughts. And the best part about this movie is I'm going to go to bed tonight and lay in bed and think about your theory more. And I might be swayed 4 or 5 times in my lifetime over what the actual meaning of all of it was. And maybe I'll watch it again, see some new symbols that'll change my mind one way or the other. Maybe I'll wake up one day and realize and think to myself, Leonard was never real. And that's just the kind of movie that it is, because it's written so ambiguously.
If this movie was directed by M. Night Shyamalan, it'd be crazy.
There'd be too many twists. But
yeah,
no, Nolan's a guy who understands how audiences view movies. And I think that's what makes him so good at what he does. But this is a 9.3 for me. It's better than Mad Max Fury Road. Fury Road is still one of the more visually stunning movies I'll ever watch. But this is the most well-constructed movie I've ever watched.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about my rating. I was thinking, what is Nick going to put this at? Is it going to be Mad Max Fury Road status? It could be. And if it does, it's just going to be an example of a different animal, but the same beast, essentially.
You're talking about Kobe Bryant.
It's the easiest way I could put it. And no, just to echo your sentiments, I think the best part about this movie is that if 2 people can walk away from this movie with not a lot of gripes about plot holes and walk away with 2 completely different interpretations from this movie and why that makes it great for them, I think that just speaks volumes about what Christopher Nolan did early on in his career, and Jonathan Nolan for the idea of this movie. I think that just goes to show you that some of the best movies are just like, yeah, they keep you thinking and they keep your theories developing, and you keep having an evolution and a growing relationship, an evolving relationship with this movie based on your individual experience every time. And when you think back on this movie, maybe your memory is going to be unreliable and you're going to think something happened, but it didn't. And you're going to think maybe, oh, it was bad, but it wasn't. It was good, but it wasn't. For us right here, right now, in our moment of time of consciousness, we think this is a great movie. And this comes out to a clean, even 9.2, matching Mad Max Fury Road for the highest rated movie that we've reviewed on this podcast. Nick, how do you feel?
Well deserved. We've hit some weird movies here so far.
Season 2 was rough, but I felt like this was owed.
It's weird. You watch movies like Smoke Signals, Indian in the Cupboard, Cimarron, Daredevil. They're not necessarily, you wouldn't call them well-constructed films. They might be fun, they might be memorable, yada, yada. But this one was really a treat to be able to sit down and break down.
It's a great one.
It deserves all the love it gets.
It deserves all the attention, all the love. And I feel like we barely scratched the surface of this movie. So I can't wait to watch this again someday. And that's our review of Christopher Nolan's Memento. So we appreciate you guys listening. Please follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Just Play It Podcast. Please follow us on X at Just Play It Pod.
If you're not following us on social media, you're not seeing the amazing promo videos that James is putting out there. And if you're not doing that, you're not a fan. And I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah, and I hate you. So you better follow us on those socials, all right?
Better do it.
Because we're out here grinding. We're forgetting what we're doing. We're forgetting where we are. And we're doing it not every week, but, a lot of the weeks out of the year. And guess what? We'll be back next week with a movie that I I honestly don't know much about it. This is going to be a classic
sci-fi movie.
Yeah, this is going to be, we're getting back into our bread and butter. You know, watching these highbrow movies is fine and all, but I feel right at home watching an 80s movie that is obscure, I know nothing about, and all I can say is that Tommy Lee Jones is in it, and I think it has something to do with a car.
Tommy Lee Jones in The Wraith 2? I'm ready.
Oh, there's a hint for next week, everybody. Thank you guys for listening. We're heading gone, and remember, when you can't remember, just see if you got any Polaroids or tattoos or notes written down and go kill somebody named John G and call it a day. Or don't. Just repeat the cycle. Who cares? And we're just like, oh shit, Joey Pants pissed his pants because he's hella dead, bitch.
Teddy, you just made me kill this guy. What the hell, man?
Now, where was I?